Chapter 152. Suku heard his words and raised his eyebrows. Does that mean that Qiguan Langjun was once a victim? Qiguan Rang strangely chose to remain silent. He was indeed a victim, but he still did not know how Suku knew so much just by meeting him. However, Qiguan Rang vaguely knew something after witnessing this person trick the county commandant. That person's eyes could truly be said to be able to see through the finest details. Suku smiled and said, "It's a good thing that Langjun is so capable. At least he won't be deceived by the scoundrel and will be able to catch him in the act. However, there are pros and cons to this. This will inevitably make him stubborn and hard to persuade. Too much trust in her own eyes and judgment. To put it bluntly, she was conceited. If the opinions of others went against her, the result would be gratifying. Logically speaking, such an overly conceited person was not a good candidate because the people under him would have a headache. If he disagreed with her and neither of them could convince the other, then who would give in the end? Qiguan Rang listened carefully and asked in a low voice, "If that's the case, aren't you worried about yourself, Xiaoyu?" Suku said, "Even so, the advantages outweigh the disadvantages. Langjun may be conceited, but he still knows his limits. If someone disagrees with him, they still have to be reasonable. He still listens to other people's opinions. Other than that, Langjun doesn't like to interfere in areas that he's not good at. This is much more likable than those idiots who want to criticize others." After saying this, Suku added, "Moreover, even if that's not the case, his slave contract is still in his hands. I can't fly away even if I have wings. The earlier I accept my fate, the earlier I get rid of unnecessary worries. Otherwise, I'll worry about nothing and make myself uncomfortable." When Qiguan Rang heard the words, slave contract, he was stunned for a moment. He did not expect Suku to sell himself into the Lu residence. Suku's demeanor and aura were not something an ordinary servant could have. "I was young and frivolous. I did something wrong and fell into a wolf's den." Suku sounded like he was complaining, but whether it was the expression on his face or the relaxed smile in his tone, it showed that he was not angry. "For a period of time I was so scared that I couldn't sleep at night." Qiguan Rang furrowed his brows and said, "Although Lanting's temperament is strange, her way of doing things is still considered proper. How can she scare you?" "I didn't say that Langjun was scared." Lu Shi's poisonous gaze from that day was still a frequent visitor to his nightmares. The two of them chatted in low voices. Their voices were as soft as the buzzing of a mosquito and could not be heard from a few steps away. No matter how good Jiang Pingji's hearing was, her mind and attention were not on the two fishermen. Meng Hun, the black-faced brawny man in disguise. He tried his best to bring the topic back to Meng Liang, but Jiang Pingji acted as if she didn't realize it. She just chatted with him and asked him about the interesting things she had seen along the way. The topic went around in circles, but Jiang Pingji still held the initiative. In the end, she suddenly sent an invitation to Meng Hun, her eyes sincere and earnest. "It's not easy to measure so much land with one's feet in the short span of 100 years. I'm a little envious." He had been trapped in Hejian County since he was young and had never been to other places. "The Central Plains is so vast. I really want to see it." Looking at Jiang Pingji's longing and innocent expression, Meng Hun suddenly saw his daughter. She used to complain to him about being trapped in the inner courtyard. She couldn't gallop like him, couldn't risk her life for the family, and couldn't build a career. He twitched the corner of his mouth and said bitterly, "Langjun, you haven't experienced any hardships. The outside world is full of barren hills and unruly rivers. Even if you stay at home, disaster will fall from the sky. Leaving home, leaving your homeland, it's even harder to move. You have to eat and sleep in the open every day. So hard. There's always a first time for everything. You can't give up your desire to go out just because of this, right?" Jiang Pingji said carelessly, "What's more, if I go out, I'll have servants to protect me. How much hardship can I go through?" She suddenly changed the topic and looked at Meng Hun with sparkling eyes. "You've been to so many places and met so many people. You must have accumulated a lot of experience. I can see that you're tall and strong. You're no worse than the servants in my house. By the way, didn't you say that you have no family and can't go back to your homeland because of the war? Why don't you just stay in the Lus? At least you'll have a place to settle down. If I go out one day, I'll take you with me. It'll save me a lot of trouble." Meng Hun's lips moved. He opened and closed them for a long time before he said something. "Langjun, you're a living Buddha, but I'm just a peasant. I don't dare to dirty your land. I won't go. If he was a normal refugee he would have said yes with gratitude. But Meng Hun wasn't one and he couldn't say yes. He didn't want to drag the Lus down because of his identity. Even if he didn't understand the dirty dealings between the gentry families, Meng Hun knew that Lu Shi and Meng Zhan had cut off all ties. Meng Liang, that little bastard, must have used another identity to sneak into the Lus. If Meng Liang died in the Lus and the Mengs found out, they would definitely make things difficult for the Lus and ask them to hand him over. No, they would probably make the entire Lus pay. Although he vaguely felt that this Lu Shi before him was a little strange, after interacting with him for a while he found that Lu Shi was indeed amiable and approachable. Moreover, he was extremely concerned about issues such as the people's livelihood. He wasn't like some of the aristocratic sons he had come into contact with in the past, who were always sentimental and worried about unreliable things. They were disgusting and would moan about nothing. Meng Hun had a good impression of Jiang Pingji because of that. But he couldn't say yes to her invitation. As expected, Jiang Pingji, who had a good temper in Meng Hun's eyes, wasn't angry or embarrassed. Instead, she sighed with regret. Jiang Pingji said, "Everyone has their own ambitions. Since you've made up your mind, I won't force you to stay." The sky was getting dark. Qiguan Rang and Meng Hun had caught 2 baskets of fish. Meng Hun couldn't get any more information out of them, so he decided to leave. Before he left, Meng Hun took a bag with him. 2 sets of warm clothes, a few pairs of oversized straw sandals, cotton socks, a few days' worth of dry food and some medicine. Jiang Pingji explained, "I saw that you have blisters on your feet, so I asked someone to prepare some medicine for you. Otherwise, if you get bitten by mosquitoes, your wounds will fester very easily. That would be troublesome." Meng Hun's heart warmed. After some hesitation he accepted the small but thoughtful gift. Qiguan Rang and Suku, who had watched the whole show, laughed. Chapter 153. Lang Jun, do you need someone to keep an eye on him? Suku asked in a low voice after Meng Hun was out of sight. There's no need for that. He'll come back anyway. Jiang Pingji was not worried that Meng Hun could escape. After all, Meng Liang was still in the Lu residence. With Meng Hun's current ability he could not ignore the Lu residence and kill Meng Liang. "Oh," Qiguan Rang said, "why are you so confident? Why can't Meng Hun wait for Meng Liang to leave?" Jiang Pingji sneered. "First, the Lu residents and the Mengs are not on good terms. They might not be willing to protect Meng Liang. Meng Hun still has a small chance of succeeding. If Meng Liang contacts his entourage he will be protected by them. With Meng Hun's current manpower, it will be impossible for him to kill Meng Liang. So if he wants to make a move, now is the best time." Qiguan Rang was speechless. He secretly exchanged a knowing look with Suku. "I'm a little curious. Why did you suspect that he was Meng Hun from the beginning?" Qiguan Rang asked. Jiang Pingji heard the question and looked at Qiguan Rang. "Isn't it obvious? I didn't suspect that he was Meng Hun. I was sure that he was from the beginning. Even if he deliberately disguised himself, his technique was clumsy and there were flaws everywhere." Qiguan Rang cupped his hands and asked, "Flaws? I wonder if Lanting can clear my doubts? I don't know if any of you have noticed, but the area between his thumb and index finger. That is, there are obvious calluses. That's the mark left behind by playing with weapons like swords, spears, swords and halberds for a long period of time. He has the waist of a bear and the back of a tiger, and the muscles on his upper arms are knotted. His clothes are old and tattered. He looks like he's down and out. But because of that, his wounds are exposed. There are a lot of deep wounds. From the wounds, we can roughly determine what weapon caused them." After Jiang Pingji finished, she added, "From this, we can determine the occupation of the other party. Other than that, although this person's toes have bloody blisters from walking, the marks are very fresh. They should have been made recently. The calluses on her feet are old and thin, which means that she once had a hard time. However, it didn't last very long. After that, the boots she wore were all soft and comfortable. Her living conditions improved a lot. Although there are calluses, they aren't thick. Not only that, he is literate. There are traces of painstaking practice on his right hand. If one started to practice calligraphy from childhood, even the most inattentive and crafty students would have their knuckles slightly deformed. The degree of deformity varied from person to person. However, although this person's fingers show signs of calligraphy practice, the knuckles are not deformed. This means that this person has been practicing calligraphy for about 19 or 20 years, and his body's skeleton is more or less fixed. Jiang Pingji analyzed as she held out her right hand for them to see. Qiguan Rang and Su Ku were both dumbfounded. They could not help but stretch out their hands. There was indeed a little mark on their knuckles. In order for the two of them to hear her clearly, Jiang Pingji slowed down her speech and tried her best to explain the content in detail so that the two of them would not be able to make sense of it. But even so, after listening to her analysis and the final conclusion, they were even more dumbfounded. Su Ku's eyes were filled with shock. He asked after a long time. Lang Jun, you said you knew the identity of the other party as soon as they met. Does this mean that you have already thought so much when you first saw him? He swallowed nervously. If that was the case, wouldn't it be a little too scary? Something like that. Jiang Pingji shrugged nonchalantly. She had stood out among so many genetic warriors. How could she not have some concrete evidence? Qiguan Rang looked down and said, "What's so surprising about that? I have also heard that Master Yuanjing of Xianxia is proficient in the art of Qimeng Duanjia and is also proficient in physiognomy. Not only can he tell the origin of the person as soon as he sees him, but he can even predict what happened before and after. It's amazing." As soon as Su Ku heard that, a lot of rumors about the demon Yuanjing of Xianxia floated into his mind. When he put the two of them together, he suddenly felt that compared to him, his Lang Jun seemed to be in the category of a normal human being. He had not become a demon or a demon. Jiang Pingji secretly glanced at Qiguan Rang with a hint of warning and sharpness in her eyes. She still remembered that in her previous life, she had retired from the first echelon of genetic warriors and entered the military to serve as a normal soldier. Her ability was gradually known by the people around her. She had long gotten used to the strange looks and the fear and alienation of the people around her. Su Ku was not a big deal. Did she need Qiguan Rang's help to ease the atmosphere? The sky was getting darker. It was time for Jiang Pingji to return to the loos. Su Ku had to busy himself with the farm, so he naturally could not follow her. Jiang Pingji's face was still cold when she got into the carriage. Qiguan Rang clicked his tongue and patted Su Ku's shoulder. "Young man, good luck." Su Ku was confused. What the hell was with Qiguan Rang's pitiful expression? Jiang Pingji felt that the carriage was already moving. She said coldly, "Next time you don't have to be a busybody." Qiguan Rang shook his head disapprovingly and said meaningfully, "Lanting, that's not right." "What's wrong?" Jiang Pingji's mood was slightly bad when she thought of some unpleasant memories. "Lanting, do you know what it means to be a ruler?" Jiang Pingji squinted her eyes and looked at him with a complicated expression. "Continue." Qiguan Rang continued, "You can't be stubborn and refuse to listen to others. It's important to open up a wide range of opinions. You can't lose yourself. Otherwise, if your subordinates have different opinions, how will the ruler make a choice? You can't be too close to your subjects to avoid messing up the hierarchy. You can't disobey orders and prohibitions. But you can't be too distant and lose the people's trust. In my opinion, ruling a country and ruling a family have the same effect." After saying that, Qiguan Rang asked, "If Xiaoyu is really afraid of you, will Lanting let him be?" Jiang Pingji was silent. Lu Shi's words appeared in her mind. "Lanting, you have to learn how to be a ruler. Your eyes can see so many things. This is something that others don't have, and it's also your unique advantage. You should make people respect you, not just fear you. It's a difference of one word, but it's a world of difference." Qiguan Rang didn't care how much Jiang Pingji would listen to him. After all, he had already said it. The so-called way to be a ruler did not have a very specific or general description. It all depended on one's understanding and experience. Su Ku was not fully grown yet. His words and actions were inevitably not comprehensive, which made Lanting feel apprehensive. Lanting had a stubborn temperament. She did not care why Su Ku had such a reaction, nor would she take the initiative to point it out. It was fine if it happened once or twice, but if it went on, it was hard to guarantee that it would not leave a hidden crack between them. Chapter 154. Qiguan Rang tapped his knees with his fingers hidden in his sleeves. He closed his eyes leisurely as if he was taking a nap. If Jiang Pingji was unhappy before, she started to reflect on herself after Qiguan Rang's words. She suddenly remembered what her superior and mentor from her previous life, who was also the former commander of the 7th Army Corps, had said. The old commander said, "You're not my only student. Out of all the candidates, you're not even my favorite successor. You're full of bad habits and your temper is beyond redemption. However, I can understand you, and in the end I still chose you. Because I always believe that you can be my ideal successor. Other than you, I can't think of anyone else who can do it. The old commander trusted her so much, but Jiang Pingji did not achieve his expectations. She did not even know why she could not do it. The way of the superior is to rule the inferior, Jiang Pingji murmured. He seemed to understand something. Qiguan Rang was moved by her expression, but he had to pretend that he did not care. Lanting can choose to hide some things, but there are some things that cannot be left unsaid. This will only increase the gap between people. No matter how good their relationship is, no matter how loyal they are, they can't withstand this kind of torture. It's lucky that Xiaoyu hasn't realized it yet. Qiguan Rang did not know if Suku was too young or too slow to react. How could he make such a low-level mistake? However, everyone was a saint and everyone made mistakes. It was okay to make mistakes as long as they could make up for it. It was scary to make a mistake without realizing it. Fortunately, Qiguan Rang admired both Jiang Pingji and Suku. Neither of them had the kind of personality that would give people headaches. Suku was quick-witted. Although he had broken some taboos, it could be attributed to the fact that he had not been with Jiang Pingji for long and was not familiar with her temperament. In addition, he was still young and inexperienced. Qiguan Rang was confident that he could make up for these mistakes slowly. As for Jiang Pingji's state, it was even more than he had expected. Jiang Pingji snapped out of her trance and looked at the person beside her. Why are you telling me this? Qiguan Rang told the truth. I just think that Lanting needs to be enlightened. If Lu Shi's ambition was merely to become a national treasure and a pillar of the country, then the other party naturally did not need to know how to control it. However, Qiguan Rang felt that this person's ambition was the complete opposite of his harmless appearance. However, it was far from enough just to have lofty aspirations. Without the corresponding conditions, it would be difficult to achieve great things in the end. Lu Shi was smart enough and his ability to read people was terrifying enough. Whether it was in terms of breadth of mind or courage, he seemed to be the most satisfactory person he had ever met. However, the most important thing was that he was not good enough. He could even be considered clumsy and failed. Jiang Pingji could not help but roll her eyes. However, he still said to Qiguan Rang, I'll thank you in advance for today's matter. I'll treat you to a formal feast next time when I have time. In response to Jiang Pingji's words, Qiguan Rang's reply made the smile on her face freeze, because he said, even though I haven't known Lanting for long, I understand the principle that those who are unaccountably solicitous are hiding evil intentions. Even if you're treating me to a banquet to thank me, the purpose behind it is definitely not as simple as just thanking me. Qiguan Rang unceremoniously exposed him. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Had her reputation become that bad? Did she have to be so jittery? She had only shown a little goodwill, and the other party was scared witless and defensive? She did not know that Qiguan Rang had already labeled her as a scheming boy after witnessing her trick the pitiful captain. However, despite his complaints, Qiguan Rang's alertness and vigilance were still commendable, because she really did not have good intentions. Jiang Pingji said, you can't say that. Gratitude is the main priority. Qiguan Rang lazily lifted his eyelids and looked as if he had expected it. Then what's the main priority? Jiang Pingji hesitated for a moment, then finally revealed her plan. The little bastard Meng Liang who stays in the Lu residence suffered a loss at my mother's side. Now he wants to get close to me to arouse my mother's pity and love. But this person has always been ignorant and incompetent. He doesn't have any skills, but he is very good at leading bad people. Wenjing, do you think I should take the bait? Qiguan Rang felt pity for Meng Liang. What does Lanting plan to do? He's a playboy. He's good at a few things: eating, drinking, whoring and gambling. Meng Liang is not a fan of good food, nor is he a good drinker. He only has a soft spot for women and gambling. If he wants to kidnap me, a place like the southern brothel is not suitable. The perfume on my body will be easily exposed and my mother will hate me. So, Qiguan Rang said, so he will most likely urge you to go to the gambling house. I also hope to go to the gambling house. It will be easier for me then. And then? The gambling house is a place where good and bad people mingle. Do you think Meng Hun will take advantage of this great opportunity to kidnap Meng Liang? Qiguan Rang was speechless. Could he say that he had already understood Jiang Pingji's plan? If Meng Liang really did urge Jiang Pingji to go to the gambling house, that place would not only be chaotic, but it would also be easy for news to spread. How could Meng Hun not think of a way to ambush and kidnap Jiang Pingji? More importantly, Meng Hun would not kidnap Jiang Pingji because he was indebted to her. As long as Jiang Pingji returned to the Luz as if nothing had happened and ordered a servant girl to pretend to be the lady's maiden, to leave the Luz, Meng Liang's disappearance and even death would have nothing to do with the Luz. Meng Hun and his men would be the ones to blame. Then she would contact Meng Hun in secret under other names. She would explain the benefits involved and force Meng Liang to write a letter asking for the grain. When the grain was in her hands, Jiang Pingji would kill Meng Hun and his men in the name of cleaning up the bandits. Their identities would be hidden. On the surface she would be the one avenging Meng Liang. How could the Mengs not show any gratitude to their benefactor? If they cleaned up the loose ends, the Mengs would only find out that Meng Liang was captured and killed by Meng Hun. The Luz would never get involved. What an affectionate and righteous woman. She wiped out the bandits, maintained the peace and avenged the Mengs, the Luz, for their son's death. Her generosity was admirable. Not only that, Meng Hun and his men would be grateful to Jiang Pingji for taking them in when they were in danger. It was all a trap. He had seen shameless people, but he had never seen someone who treated shamelessness as a virtue. What made him feel even more helpless was that Qiguan Rang liked shameless people. He could already foresee how poor Meng Liang would be played to death. It doesn't matter if Meng Liang is dead or not. What matters is the grain. How much do you think I should ask the Mengs for? Before Qiguan Rang could answer, he heard a crisp beeping sound. Chapter 155. The system's cheerful voice traveled into her ears. Yo, did the host miss me? Jiang Pingji said mercilessly, no. Without you I don't know how peaceful my ears would be. After the system's upgrade, it seemed to have become more humane and thick-skinned. It wasn't like before when it would whine when it was choked. After the upgrade, the system understood that it was its host and they couldn't be separated. No matter how much Jiang Pingji disliked it, she needed it. As an omnipotent system, it could fulfill all of its host's ambitions and wishes. Jiang Pingji dealt with Qiguan Rang while she asked the system, you said you needed 12 hours to upgrade, but why do I feel like you've been upgrading for almost 24 hours? I thought I'd have to stream today as usual. The system said evasively, the estimation of the upgrade time was wrong, so it took more time than expected. Jiang Pingji laughed in her heart, but she didn't continue to ask about it. Instead she asked something else. You said you've upgraded once. You can't be as useless as before, right? Jiang Pingji never hid her disdain for the system. The system had been sad many times because of it. Tell me about it. If you're still as useless as before, I think you should upgrade again. Time isn't a problem. You can upgrade as long as you want. Being ridiculed so mercilessly by her, the system became unhappy again. The system said proudly, you ignored me yesterday, but you might not be able to reach me today. Listening to the system's tone, Jiang Pingji seemed to be able to imitate its proud expression. Oh, tell me about it. I want to know to what extent a useless system can be upgraded. The system suppressed its urge to explode. It pretended to cough twice and cleared its throat. Then the host should listen carefully. In order to provide a more complete and convenient service for the host, the upgrade added a humanized emotion section. This will make it easier for us to communicate. To increase the host's popularity as a streamer and increase the viewability of the stream, the real-time task section has also been added. The real-time task section? Jiang Pingji frowned in her heart, but she didn't show any signs of abnormality. The system said excitedly, the system will analyze the people and things that the host has experienced in real time and issue temporary missions from time to time to guide the host to integrate into this era more perfectly. When the host completes the missions perfectly, the host will receive additional rewards. Jiang Pingji went straight to the point and asked, can I refuse such a mission? The system quickly replied, no, this is a mission automatically added to the mission list. Completing it will only bring benefits to the host. Jiang Pingji sneered in her heart. There would be no harm in completing the task, but what if she refused to complete it or failed the task? Jiang Pingji was disgusted from the bottom of her heart when someone else's will was forced upon her. The system became more capricious. It sensitively discovered that Jiang Pingji was not enthusiastic about this matter. She even rejected and hated it. It said carefully, "The host seems to be very unwilling to do this kind of task. Why should I be willing to do a task that is forced upon me? What if the mission's contents conflict with my own wishes? What if I refuse to go on the mission? Or will the mission fail?" Jiang Pingji asked a few questions in a row. The system had no time to answer. "I don't care about the rewards for completing the mission. Who allowed you to make such a decision on your own?" The system was speechless. Then its voice became more forceful. "I hope that the host will not be capricious. This is the most correct and most beneficial outcome after countless calculations. As your system, I will only be good if you are good. I hope you can understand this." Jiang Pingji snorted coldly. "You can give me the mission if you want. It's my business whether I do it or not." The system lowered its voice and said seriously, "Host, please do not be capricious. Completing the mission will make your future path smoother. This is the conclusion I came up with after countless calculations. I hope that you will not disappoint my good intentions. Real-time triggered missions are mainly for the host's benefit. They will not harm you." Jiang Pingji dragged her voice. "I will not, do I?" The system was silent for a while and said earnestly, "If the host insists on being capricious, you will regret it. You must know that benefits and risks coexist. There will be generous rewards for completing the mission. If you fail the mission or don't do it, you will have to bear the consequences of failing the mission." Jiang Pingji's thin lips curved. She lowered her eyes to hide the faint killing intent brewing in them. The system's words caused her to rebel. She said it angrily. "I'll bear the consequences. Do you think that I, Jiang Pingji, will be threatened?" It was useless for the system to be anxious. Jiang Pingji had completely developed a rebellious mentality. The more it looked forward to it, the more she was unwilling to do it. In the end, the system could only say angrily, "My good intentions have been turned against me. Host, you will suffer greatly if you do this." It thought that Jiang Pingji would be wild with joy, so the system took the liberty of downloading and upgrading the real-time triggered mission section to help the host reach the peak of her life. Remembered that many systems did the same thing. The host's eyes went wide when she saw the mission reward. The host, on the other hand, was basically a donkey. She had a stubborn temper, but her reaction was so intense and determined. Jiang Pingji only replied with one sentence. "I'm tired today. I don't feel like streaming for now. Be quiet if there's nothing else." Chapter 156. As Qiguan Rang left with Wei Yuan asked him urgently, "Wenjing, what do you think of Lanting?" Qiguan Rang tilted his head to look at Wei Yuan. He wondered what Lu Shi had said to Wei Yuan. Why did he suddenly ask such a question? In my opinion, this child is extraordinary." As Qiguan Rang spoke, he observed Wei Yuan's face, which seemed to be deep in thought. In times of peace, he would be a powerful minister and an important asset to the country. In times of chaos, he would at least be a lord. Wei Yuan's expression froze as if he was still struggling with something. After a long time, he let out a long sigh. "I just tested Lu Zhongqing. I'm afraid the current situation." Wei Yuan was not Jiang Pingji. He could not say things like directly saying that the country was about to perish. The aristocratic families have their own agendas. They are playing with the power of the court. The princes are not doing anything. The battle between Nanxing and the four factions of Nanman is not optimistic. It is already showing signs of decline. Sigh. Although Wei Yuan's surname was Wei, his family was not prominent. He could only be considered wealthy among the poor. Seeing the declining situation, his heart ached, but he could not do anything about it. Among the 5 countries in the Central Plains, who did not insist that they were the legitimate rulers. Since the division of the Xia kingdom, everyone knew that there would be a war between the 5 countries, who did not covet the other 4 countries. However, since the founding of Dongqing, they had always valued culture and restrained military power. Due to the frequent harassment from the 3 tribes of the northern borderline, the people at the border were poor. The soldiers did not have the opportunity to rest and recuperate. They were like old horses that had traveled long distances with empty stomachs. They were now exhausted. Not to mention the aristocratic families controlled the court. There were also many vermin of the country who exploited the people, causing great resentment among the people. Even Lu Shi was barely able to protect himself in Hu County. The other aristocratic families hadn't tried to divide Hu County because Lu Shi's methods of governing Hu County were too bloody. His attitude was very domineering, as if he would rather die in glory than live in dishonor. Wei Yuan knew Lu Shi. Although he was a bit evil, he was a peaceful person. He could not stand open strife and veiled strife. He was forced to do this because he had no other choice. Wei Yuan sighed. If Nanxing could defeat the 4 factions of Nanman, we would have a chance to breathe, but it was better to be a dog in prosperity than a man in chaos. If they could live a peaceful life, no one would want to live every day with blades, spears, swords and halberds for fear that one day they would lose their lives. Qiguan Rang was not as emotional as Wei Yuan. He said calmly, Master Gongchao, you must know that the world is divided after a long period of union, and united after a long period of union. Now that the 5 countries are not giving way, chaos is only a matter of time. It's all the same whether it's earlier or later. Wei Yuan's expression was one of helplessness. Although that was what he said, he still found it hard to accept. After all, the current situation was not only inevitable but also human greed. Those high and mighty aristocratic families didn't care. Regardless of whether it was a chaotic era or a prosperous era, it wouldn't affect their wealth at all. It was just that the common people were pitiful. It was difficult for them to leave their homeland, but once the flames of war spread, they could only leave their homes. Wei Yuan was just a teacher with no background. No matter how anxious he was, he could only watch helplessly. There was nothing he could do. Qiguan Rang continued. Mr. Gongchao just asked Rang how Lanting was. Is County Chief Lu's intention? Wei Yuan scowled. Watch your words. How can you say something like that? I'm just going to wait and see. Regardless of whether it was true or not, being on good terms with Lu Shi was beneficial to them. Qiguan Rang was silent. Even though Wei Yuan didn't give him a specific answer, he knew very well that regardless of whether Lu Shi had the intention to cause trouble or not, his son was someone who wanted to see the world in chaos. He wasn't someone who was willing to be under someone else's command. The carriage was silent. Wei Yuan and Qiguan Rang returned to their residences with their own thoughts. On the other side, Jiang Pingji's patience had reached its limit. She stared coldly at Meng Liang, who was still acting recklessly. She had seen people who wanted to die, but she had never seen someone who wanted to die at such a good time. Meng Liang was still dressed in women's clothing. He looked shy, but the condescending look in his eyes betrayed his true feelings. Jiang Pingji's impatience had reached its peak. She could have slapped him in the face the next second. The system was enough to annoy her. She wanted to be alone, but she didn't expect an even more disgusting *T stir to come at her. Why are you looking for me? You and I are men and women. Even though I'm still young, being in the same room will still attract criticism. Jiang Pingji's tone was very stiff, with a hint of impatience. Meng Liang had been spoiled since he was a child. Others had always been the ones to look up to him. When had he ever had the chance to observe others? He didn't realize how bad Jiang Pingji's mood was. Even if Meng Liang was there to build a relationship, Jiang Pingji should have taken the initiative to flatter him. Does cousin Lanting not like me? Other than the first time I came to the Lu residence, I haven't seen you at all. Jiang Pingji took a deep breath. Cousin, you're almost 15 years old. Men and women should be different. Why would I look for you for no reason? What a boring blockhead. Meng Liang secretly spat and said, even so, it's not a bad thing for cousins to be a little closer to each other. Plus, I'm here alone with a few servants to visit my aunt. I'm not familiar with the place and the people. It's boring. If that's the case, why do you want to see me? Jiang Pingji couldn't be bothered to feign civility. She went straight to the point. She was not in a good mood at the moment. Since someone had come to get into the muzzle, if she did not vent her anger, wouldn't she be even more sullen? Meng Liang's cheeks were red. He asked quietly, does Lanting know any fun places here? Jiang Pingji clicked her tongue in her heart. What fun places could there be in this ancient era that was so backward? But she still said indecently, there are fun places, but you're a woman. It's not convenient for you to go. She had made it so clear. Meng Liang was an experienced player. How could he not understand what she was talking about? If it was any other time, he would have just teased her and asked her to go for a walk. But he was a woman now. It was not appropriate for him to be too enthusiastic. It was also not convenient for him to go to such places. Thus he pretended to be coquettish. Cousin, do you hate me that much? How could you say such inappropriate things? Hypocrite. Jiang Pingji snorted in her heart. She suppressed the surging disgust in her heart. Seeing that Jiang Pingji didn't reply, Meng Liang was slightly unhappy. He had such a beautiful face, but someone didn't take the bait. Chapter 157. Meng Liang twisted the handkerchief in his hand and said awkwardly, I heard from a few servants that there is no curfew in Hejian, and it's very lively at night. It's rare for me to be here, so I want to go and have a look. But my aunt isn't feeling well and my uncle is busy with work. If I go out alone, wouldn't my reputation be tarnished if I run into some hooligans? That's why I'm here to look for you. Jiang Pingji smiled coldly. Since he was asking for it, he couldn't blame her for being ruthless. Besides, which noble lady didn't have servants around her when she went out to play? How pretentious, she said awkwardly, but you're a woman after all. If you go out with me like this, people will gossip. What if your reputation is ruined? If you're really bored, I can let the maidservants play with you in the yard. If you go out. Meng Liang secretly gritted his teeth. He didn't expect Lu Shi to be such a sanctimonious hypocrite. He was already tempted, but he had to pretend to be inviolable and say that he was doing it for his sake. Meng Liang planned to continue persuading her, but he was even more depressed. If he was in Meng County in Psong Prefecture, anyone would flatter him. He could even ask someone to kneel down and lick his toes. But who was Lu Shi? He dared to act pretentious in front of him. Meng Liang couldn't help but feel resentful. He blamed half of it on Lu Shi, who didn't know what was good for him, and the other half on the manservant who came up with ideas. When he got back, he would kick the manservant who came up with such ideas. Before Meng Liang could respond, Jiang Pingji added another sentence. How about this? If you really want to go out to play, why don't you change into a man's attire? That way, even if people see you, they won't say anything. Jiang Pingji suggested seriously, if I see someone I know, I can say that you're a new friend. How about that? She put on an expression that said, I'm doing this for your own good, and said reluctantly, I'm afraid you don't know that I just broke off my engagement with the Wei girl. People see me taking you out to play, people might spread rumors that Lai Shi is a fickle man, and that's why he broke off his relationship with the Wei girl. If that's the case, Lai Shi's reputation will be in jeopardy. What else could Jiang Pingji do? She was helpless. The corner of Meng Liang's mouth twitched as if he had just heard some stupid suggestion. Let him cross-dress? To think that his cousin could think of this. However, this was also a compromise. From Lu Shi's point of view, it was indeed a win-win solution. Not only could she protect her cousin's reputation, but she could also prevent herself from being gossiped about. Moreover, she could also help her cousin relieve her boredom. However, even though the idea was good, it depended on whether Meng Liang would agree to it or not. Although Meng Liang was a jerk and had a muddle-headed brain, he wasn't completely dumb. The world was big, but life was the most important. What if he was discovered by Meng Hun when he returned to his male attire? However, if he did not agree and missed this opportunity, it would not be easy to find a reason to drag Lu Shi out the next time. Jiang Pingji could tell that he was conflicted. She took the opportunity to remind him, I'm wrong. You're so beautiful. If you disguise as a man, you won't be able to hide your femininity. Doesn't make a difference if you disguise as a woman. It's getting late. If you don't have any other instructions, I'll ask my servant to send you back to your room. When it gets dark, you won't be able to see your own fingers. It won't be good if you fall. Meng Liang was suddenly enlightened. How could he be so stupid? It was so dark outside. If he returned to his male attire and put on some makeup, who would recognize him? That Meng Hun was just a lowly captain, a dog that followed his father around all the time. That pair of dog eyes had only glanced at him a few times. All he had to do was put on some makeup. How could that Meng Hun recognize him in the dark? It seemed that he was overthinking things. He was so nervous about being threatened by a lowly servant. Meng Liang's heart calmed down. He smiled and covered his mouth with his handkerchief. What's the rush, Cousin Lanting? I haven't been out much lately. I'm still in a daze after hearing your bold suggestion. Jiang Pingji smiled. Her tone was relaxed and a little indulgent. If that's the case, I'll wait in the courtyard for you to change into male attire. Remember to ask the maidservants by your side to put on some heroic makeup for you, so that others won't recognize you if you look too feminine. Meng Liang was still smiling when he heard the first part of Jiang Pingji's words. When she said the second part, he couldn't help but feel gloomy. If it wasn't for the fact that Lu Shi didn't know who he was, he would have suspected that Lu Shi was mocking him for being a sissy. Meng Liang suppressed the anger in his heart. He put on a smile and walked away gracefully. As a new personal servant, Nongqin walked him to the door. When Meng Liang was out of sight, there was still some fear in her big eyes. She secretly heaved a sigh of relief and hurried back. Langjun. Before Nongqin could finish, Jiang Pingji was already leaning lazily on the table. She flipped a fan in her palm. Nongqin, go and prepare a new set of clothes for the manservant. Yes. Nongqin swallowed back the question she was about to ask. When she came back with the clothes, Jiang Pingji pointed at the clothes with the fan and said to Nongqin, "You wear it." Nongqin was confused. She held the clothes and didn't know what to do. What? Go out with me tonight and watch the monkey show. Jiang Pingji smiled meaningfully. Nongqin held the clothes and looked at her Langjun, blushing slightly. Because she was a personal servant, Nongqin had the right to know a secret. Her Langjun was a girl. When she first found out, she was stunned. But, even though she knew her Langjun was a girl, Nongqin still looked at him in a daze. In her eyes, there were thousands of men in the world, but none of them could be as charming as her Langjun. Just like that smile just now, it was actually somewhat sinister and awe-inspiring, bewitching to the point of not wanting it. Nongqin put on the manservant's clothes. The clothes were a bit loose. She wrapped layers of cloth in front of her chest to cover her features. She put on a layer of dark powder and trimmed her eyebrows. From afar she looked like a delicate and pretty boy. Fortunately, I didn't pierce my ears. Otherwise I would have been exposed. Jiang Pingji glanced at Nongqin and was slightly satisfied. She took Nongqin out to watch the show not because she favored her, but because she was the only one who didn't have pierced ears. She wanted to take Suku out, but he was still in the farm, so she didn't want to. Nongqin was stunned when she saw Jiang Pingji was about to go out empty-handed. Langjun, please wait. I'll go prepare some silver. How could she go shopping without money? She snorted. Prepare what? Someone will pay for it. If everything goes well tonight, I might be able to save a betrothal gift for you. Nongqin was confused again. Chapter 158. That being said, Jiang Pingji didn't really bring nothing. At least she brought 10 taels of silver. For an ordinary family, it was a luxury to bring 10 taels of silver with them. They had to be careful of pickpockets. Jiang Pingji felt that it was enough. But for Meng Liang, who was used to being extravagant, 10 taels of silver was not enough for him. Dongqing was different from the other 4 countries. There was no curfew at night, but the city gates would be closed at night. The night market was bustling with people. Vendors were hawking their wares. Most of them were intricately woven goods or trinkets. Silk and floral jewelry filled the stalls. The materials used were cheap and simple, but the craftsmanship was exquisite. It was obvious that a lot of thought had been put into it. It was a prosperous scene. Even though it was already night, there were still a few young girls wearing bamboo hats in the night market. Their faces could not be seen, but their slender and graceful backs were enough to make some people lose their ability to walk. Jiang Pingji secretly glanced at them and teased, "Cousin, you're more manly than she." He saw 2 young ladies with graceful figures, their eyes almost glued to the other party's body. No matter how beautiful they are, how can they compare to your beauty? Meng Liang was enjoying the show, so it was not hard to imagine how unhappy he was to be interrupted. Although he had always been proud of his looks, there were always people who said he was a woman. It was a way of mocking him for not being a man. Now that Jiang Pingji had emphasized this point, if it wasn't for the fact that he wasn't in Meng County, he would have slapped her. Do you know how to speak? However, Meng Liang was still rational. He did not put his thoughts into action. Instead, he clenched his fists and put on a fake smile. Lanting, you should call me cousin when we're outside. Otherwise, what would happen if someone heard us? What's more, everyone loves beauty. Seeing a beautiful young lady, why can't you let your cousin take a good look? Jiang Pingji replied with an "oh," but she sneered in her heart. Calling him cousin? He really doesn't want to die fast enough. She turned her face away with slight disgust, but she called him cousin sweetly. Meng Liang was happy to hear that. Jiang Pingji stopped in front of a stall and asked the vendor, "How much are these silk flowers?" She picked up the pair of ball-shaped silk flowers that she had taken a fancy to. They were made of rabbit fur and dyed bright colors. They looked very pretty. There were also many ball-shaped silk flowers of different colors hanging on the stall. The materials used were not exquisite, but they were novel. Cousin Lanting, are you kidding me? How can a man like these things? Meng Liang took the opportunity to retaliate. Jiang Pingji said casually, I think they look good. I'll buy a few pairs for the maids in the yard. Girls love beauty. Rouge, face powder, silk ornaments, clothes, hair. No amount of money is enough. Nojin, try this. The color is just right. Nongqin blushed and took it. She could still feel the warmth of the man on the ball-shaped silk flower. Thank you, Langjun. I forgot. It's not suitable for you to wear it in your current state. Let's go back and try it on. Nongqin, who was about to put it on, suddenly froze and blushed. She seemed to have forgotten that she was dressed as a manservant. Why would she try on silk flowers? Meng Liang, who was standing to the side, clicked his tongue and said, Cousin Lanting, are these cheap gifts for girls? It's not like a personal maid is anything else. If she wears gold and silver, what will she look like? Jiang Pingji picked a few pairs that she felt were of good workmanship. She also bought a few rouge boxes and some fresh-colored lip gloss to protect her lips and not be eye-catching. Moreover, girls at this age are already the most beautiful. Why would they need those old-fashioned and expensive accessories? They would forcefully suppress their aura. Jiang Pingji picked out a lot of miscellaneous items and prepared a set for each of her maids. She didn't give more or less for anyone. She could be patient and buy these small, cheap gifts, but Meng Liang was not in the mood. She wanted to take a roundabout way to lure Zhou Xian to the gambling house. Obedient children like him who stayed in the yard were easily attracted by new things. If she brought him here a few times, he would definitely become addicted to gambling. In order to keep the secret, he would have to get close to her. That way she could achieve her goal of getting close to Zhou Xian and destroy him secretly. Tiske, he wanted to see how big Zhou Xi's family business was for his ignorant son to squander it. But now, looking at Zhou Xi's sissy buying this and that, who knew when he would achieve his goal? Cousin, why do you want to go to that kind of place? Jiang Pingji frowned and denied it. I'm not going. It's a messy place. What if someone offends you? Cousin, you should go somewhere else. I heard that it's dirty. Jiang Pingji's naive words made Meng Liang laugh in his heart. Cousin Lanting, why are you so nervous? In the past, I heard from the servants that many nobles like to go there as well. Since everyone likes to go, it shouldn't be as bad as you say. I'm just curious and want to see it. Cousin, please allow me. I'm not nervous. I'm just worried that a rough person will offend you. If something happens, how will I explain it to my mother? Jiang Pingji rejected him with righteous words and put on an attitude that said there was no room for negotiation. But was Meng Liang the kind of person who would give up so easily? In the end, Jiang Pingji couldn't handle Meng Liang's aggression. She reluctantly said that she would bring him there to have a look and that he would come out after seeing it. Nongqin was anxious, but she could not say anything to stop him. She could not say that Meng Liang was up to no good. With such anxiety in her heart, Nongqin watched her Langjun enter a gambling house. When the curtain was lifted, the gambling house was filled with people. Many shirtless men were standing on long benches and shouting around a table. Big, 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 big. Small, small, must be small. Nongqin couldn't help but tremble when she heard all the similar noises. It's okay, I'm here. At that moment, Jiang Pingji put a hand on her shoulder and turned around to smile at her. Strangely, Nongqin's fear disappeared and she gradually calmed down. The gambling house was big. There were more than 10 tables on the first floor, and each table was surrounded by more than 10 to 20 men. When the waiter in the lobby saw them, his eyes suddenly lit up. Young age, tender face, gorgeous clothes. When these characteristics were put together, they formed a shiny label. Fat sheep. What would you like to play? The waiter came forward with a face full of smiles, revealing a mouthful of shiny yellow teeth. Chapter 159. The waiter chuckled and said, There are many fun things to do here. If you are interested, I can tell you about them. Then tell me about them. I'm listening. Meng Liang said that, but deep down he was feeling proud of himself. Okay, listen up. Single and even dice flips for directions, treasure stalls, big and small pig nests, chicken fights, duck fights, quail fights. As if he was reciting the names of dishes, he recited more than a dozen different games without taking a breath, and even shouted at the end. I'm not playing. Jiang Pingji interrupted him and turned to leave. The waiter was dumbfounded. The voice of the name list stopped abruptly. He didn't even have the time to stop her. But since she was already at the gambling house, how could Meng Liang let her leave without playing? Cousin Lanting, since you're already here, why don't you play a few rounds before you leave? Besides, there's nothing fun outside. Meng Liang's face was full of smiles. He placed his hand on Jiang Pingji's shoulder and coaxed her to go back. Jiang Pingji frowned impatiently and said righteously, "Cousin, you said that you're just here to take a look. Why are you playing now? Gamblers don't have connections. This doesn't sound good. Cousin, don't be too curious." Meng Liang rolled his eyes. She was good at preaching, but she was just a fool who didn't know how to have fun. He let go of her shoulder and pouted. "Cousin Lanting, you want to leave, but I don't want to." Meng Liang decided to play the blame game. He was sure that Jiang Pingji wouldn't dare to leave a weak girl like him in a gambling house. In the end, Jiang Pingji had to stay, which made Meng Liang feel a sense of accomplishment. Although the waiter wanted to take advantage of a fat sheep, he was not blind. He quietly waited for them to come to a conclusion. Although he looked sincere on the surface, he had already begun to roll his eyes in his heart. What kind of place was a gambling house? It was a place that could make people rich, but it could also make them bankrupt. It was a place where they could sell their children and become a pimp. Even the god of fortune would be skinned alive if he came, let alone 3 naive kids who had never seen the world. There was a saying that went, "The one who enters is the boss, and the one who loses is the boss." The waiter only needed to coax the 3 of them in and someone would suck them dry. Meng Liang curiously approached one of the tables. "What are they playing?" Those gamblers had just finished a round and were so excited that their brains were heating up. Those who had won were so excited that they were sweating profusely, while those who had lost looked like they were unlucky. There were even some who had lost too badly and were now in a daze, looking as if they had suffered a great blow and could no longer live. The waiter said, "This table is playing big or small. There are 3 dice in the dice cup, and after you shake them you can choose big or small." The rules were simple and straightforward. Even people who had never played before could learn it quickly. Jiang Pingji glanced coldly at the gambling cup in the dealer's hand. At that moment, the lid of the gambling cup was not closed. She could see the 3 dusty dice. She raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Isn't it simple to bet on big or small?" The waiter smiled. "It is indeed simple and easy to earn. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people playing." Many gamblers thought that a 50% chance of winning was too much. That was why they took the first step, and then they were cheated. Of the 3 dice, 4 to 10 were small and 11 to 17 were big. If the dice were 3 or 18, which meant that all 3 dice were 1 or 6, then the banker would take it all. Betting on big or small would lose, and the odds were 1 to 1. How dare they play such a childish game in front of her? "Cousin Lanting, what do you choose?" Seeing that a new round of bets was about to begin, the dealer had already finished shaking the dice and was about to place his bet. Jiang Pingji pretended to be righteous and refused to play, but Meng Liang was very confident in his charm. He acted coquettishly and succeeded in making Lanting's cousin take the first step. One of them chose big while the other chose small. The results were delightful. The tail Jiang Pingji had left behind was taken by Meng Liang. "You've played. Can you leave now, cousin?" Jiang Pingji said unhappily. "What do you mean you've played? One tail is one tail. Cousin Lanting, are you really willing to let your money fall into someone else's pocket? If you don't want to play, I'll play. Cousin Lanting isn't short of money. Money can't buy my happiness. As long as I have fun, I don't care about anything else." Meng Liang refused to leave. He played another 2 rounds and won both rounds. Many gamblers were cheering. Jiang Pingji looked cold, but deep down she was tempted. Meng Liang immediately fanned the flames. "It's boring to stand around. Why don't you play with your cousin for a while?" Jiang Pingji used Meng Liang as an excuse. But was she playing along with him, or did she want to play? Meng Liang's eyes saw through the truth. Compared to Meng Liang's winning streak, Jiang Pingji was unlucky. She lost 5 times in a row and lost 5 taels of silver. Nongqin watched anxiously. What kind of people were there in the gambling house? You were the boss when you were rich, but you were worse off than your grandson when you lost money. "Don't worry. My luck has always been good." Jiang Pingji played with the last tael of silver and smiled meaningfully. Others would win or lose based on luck, but Jiang Pingji purely depended on her willingness to win. Meng Liang saw that Jiang Pingji was starting to get into the groove. He smiled to himself and took his winnings to another table. "Do you still want to play, Langjun?" the dealer asked. Of course. Jiang Pingji threw the last tael of silver to small. Open. Jiang Pingji, who had lost 5 rounds in a row, suddenly won. Her bet was small. The odds were 1 to 1. Now she had 2 taels of silver in her hands. She placed the 2 taels on the small table. The dealer smiled. You still want to bet small? Because of the 8 rounds of small, many people placed their bets on big. Only Jiang Pingji still chose small. Yes. The dealer took off the cover of the dice cup. 1 3 for 8 points small. She had 4 taels of silver in her hands. I'll bet big this round. Jiang Pingji still placed all her taels of silver. The dealer took off the cover of the dice cup. 4 4 5 13 points big. She had 8 taels of silver in her hands. Again big. She had 16 taels of silver in her hands. The dealer's expression was a little stiff. He smiled and said, "You're really lucky." Jiang Pingji was surprised. Was that considered lucky? She was afraid of herself when she gambled. She didn't know that more than a dozen casinos in the federal black market had closed down because of her occasional visits. Her identity was special. Even when she lost so much money in the black market casinos, no one dared to do anything to her. Chapter 160. From losing to winning, Jiang Pingji quickly won 256 taels of silver. Nongqin's eyes were wide open as she watched her win. How long had it been? She went from 1 tael to 256 taels. The dealer's palms were sweating. He secretly wiped his sweat and pretended to be calm. 256 taels of silver was a huge sum of money for a small or medium-sized casino. Do you still want to bet this round? Jiang Pingji looked down and said, I wanted to pick the small one, but I won't bet for this round. Nongqin was confused. Her Langjun wanted to pick the small one. Why didn't he bet? The gamblers didn't have the same idea. They all bet on the small one with the intention of making a profit. However, Jiang Pingji knew very well that the dealer would take all in this round. Big or small was not allowed. Sure enough, it was a rare 3 sixes, a leopard. Although the dealer took all in, the dealer couldn't laugh because Jiang Pingji still won the next 2 rounds. It meant that Jiang Pingji only lost 5 taels, but she won 10-24 taels in the end. The dealer couldn't sit still anymore. He felt uncomfortable, as if there were countless needles poking him under his butt. He found an excuse to say that he was going to the gambling house, but in fact he went to the 2nd floor to look for the boss. According to Jiang Pingji's previous rules, the gambling house would be finished if she won another 2 or 3 rounds. The profits of the next few years would be gone. In a place like a gambling house, there were all kinds of shady methods. Otherwise, how could people lose all their money and eventually sell their children, and even use their wives to pay off the debt, letting them sell themselves to the brothel to pay off the debt? They made money from blackmail. What seemed like a fair game was actually a shady business. In the simplest form of gambling on size, every die was specially made. The seemingly ordinary die had a weight bias, and the dealer relied on his skillful technique and keen sense of touch to greatly control the sum of the number of dice that came out of each round. Gambling dens of a larger scale could even change the number of dice at 0 after the gamblers placed their bets, turning big into small. That was why there were so many losers and so few winners, even though the odds of winning were 50-50. Even if someone won, they would quickly lose back. These were the tricks of the gambling house. If they encountered a fat sheep, they would usually let the fat sheep earn a few rounds. Then when the other party's bets got bigger and bigger, they would slightly turn the tables. The banker and the gamblers would say something like, "Victory or defeat depends on luck. If you're unlucky this time, you'll definitely turn around the next time." This would stimulate the fat sheep's nerves and make them continue to increase their bets by a huge amount. The casino owner couldn't sit still when he heard that. The boss asked him, "Didn't you do anything?" The dealer had an aggrieved look on his face. "I did, but that kid was so slippery. It was as if he already knew that I was going to attack, and he always managed to avoid me. I can't possibly use leopard in every round, right? If I do that, the others will also notice that something is wrong." The boss was also burning with anxiety. He was the one who owned the gambling house. Jiang Pingji's earning money was like digging meat out of him. If it really doesn't work, then let him win. When the time comes. The boss made a chopping motion with his hand. What kind of rotten things had they not done in this line of work? Blocking someone's money was like killing their parents. Jiang Pingji had earned so much money from him that her hatred had escalated to the level of killing her parents. The dealer was shocked. He was quite tempted, but he added with some difficulty, "I'm afraid that won't work. I'm afraid that won't work. Judging from the attire of those brats, they don't seem to be from an ordinary family." In Hejin County, gentry families were as numerous as the hairs on a cow. If they were not ordinary people, they could be the sons of gentry families if they were dressed differently. How could they afford to offend a small gambling house? The boss was so angry that he stomped his feet. "Then what do you think we should do?" The dealer thought for a while and suddenly had an idea. He said, "I remember now. That kid has an accomplice who is also playing at the other table. Although he's not bad, he doesn't have that evil winning streak. Should we kill the other one?" Jiang Pingji was evil, but the other older boy was very ordinary. They could use him as an example. However much the evil brat won here, they could make the ordinary one lose the same amount or even more. This idea seemed to be very good. The boss and the dealer looked at each other, and they both saw the satisfaction in each other's eyes. That was a brilliant idea. Jiang Pingji looked at the dealer coldly. She closed her eyes slightly, knowing that the big fish had taken the bait. How dare they scheme against her? She would definitely let them know what it meant to lose everything in one's pants. "Let's continue," Jiang Pingji said leisurely with a slight smile on her face. That look made the dealer's heart tremble. He almost dropped the dice cup with his hand that was shaking the dice. It was not because Jiang Pingji's smile was beautiful, but because of his sharp intuition from living in the marketplace. He felt threatened. The group of gamblers was excited to watch the show. After all, they lost more than they won, and they were excited to win some occasionally. Now they saw someone really winning streak, and the bet had reached more than 4,000 taels of silver. Looking at the rows of gold in front of Jiang Pingji, everyone felt like they were going blind. If the gold was exchanged for the equivalent of more than 4,000 taels of silver, they would not even be able to transport it home. The dealer calmed himself down and asked with a smile, "Young Langjun, do you want to continue betting?" Jiang Pingji suddenly smiled, and what she said made the dealer choke. "No. It's not challenging. It's boring." She pretended to stand up, and Nongqin, who was behind her, immediately walked up to the table and wrapped the gold in her arms. Nongqin's arms were heavy and she was still dizzy. She felt very unreal. The dealer panicked and wanted to persuade her to stay, but when he heard the sound of Meng Liang slamming the table, he immediately calmed down. It was okay. If one table was won, wouldn't the other table lose as well? Jiang Pingji seemed to have only just realized that Meng Liang had gone to another table. "Cousin." Jiang Pingji brought Nongqin over. Meng Liang's eyes were bloodshot and he looked like he had lost his mind. "Get out of my way." Meng Liang turned around and shouted. He pointed at the dealer and said, "Continue betting." Jiang Pingji was not angry. Instead, she asked the gambler beside her, "Cousin, what is he?" The gambler answered with a smile. He could not hide the gloating in his tone. "You better stop your cousin. He has already lost more than 6,000 taels of silver." More than 6,000 taels of silver? Jiang Pingji was speechless. Wasn't this too much? This table was filled with odd and even players. It was bigger than the previous table, and on the surface, it looked more fair. But when Jiang Pingji glanced at the dice cup, she immediately knew why Meng Liang had lost so badly. Chapter 161. Jiang Pingji stopped talking after being yelled at. She looked at Meng Liang coldly as he continued to court death. Everyone in Meng County fawned over him. Even in a gambling house, the boss would treat him well. That was why he won a lot of money every time he went there. As time went by, Meng Liang had the illusion that he was the king of the gambling table. Now he was in trouble. This was Hejin County, not Meng County, Tsong Prefecture. Not everyone was fawning over him. Nongqin held the gold in her arms tightly. Her face turned pale when she heard the number. Langjun, this. If they continued to lose, she and her Langjun would not be able to leave. Who asked the three of them to come together? It's a trap. There's no hurry. Jiang Pingji sneered. How could she not know what the gambling house was planning? Or rather, it was the result of her deliberate manipulation. But what was the connection between Meng Liang's losing and her winning? Meng Liang was the legitimate son of the Mengs. He had the best food and clothes. Plus, his real mother was Meng Zhan's concubine. She was secretly in charge of the inner house. What could he not have? The amount of money he made every month was terrifying. On the gambling table, the smallest bet was in the hundreds. Sometimes when he played big, it was possible to bet more than 1,000. However, no one dared to win against him. Even if they did, it would be pointless. Meng Liang would just bring his servants to his doorstep. He was a jinx. This time he bet another 1,000 taels of silver. Jiang Pingji smiled coldly, but the dealer smiled like a fox. Langjun, you've already bet a few thousand taels. We're a small business. If you can't pay us back after gambling, we'll lose a lot. The dealer played hard to get. It seemed like he did not want Meng Liang to continue gambling, but his words hinted at something else. Meng Liang almost laughed. How could he not have the money? Who did he think he was? Why are you talking so much nonsense? He is a snob. Do you think I'll lose out on such a small amount of silver? He slammed the table. If it were not for his expensive clothes and good looks, he would look like a gangster. After being scolded, the dealer didn't get angry. Instead, he smiled and shrugged. Of course. I can tell that you have an extraordinary background when I look at you, but how can that compare to real gold and silver? We haven't even seen a single strand of silver here. If you win, we'll have to give you real silver. Meng Liang was so angry that he wanted to tear this person's mouth apart. If he was still in Meng County, who would dare to treat him like this? What a snob. But as angry as he was, Meng Liang did not have any money with him. Thinking about this, he became even angrier. When the dealer saw that Meng Liang still hadn't taken out the money, he couldn't help but snort coldly. If you don't have money, you pretend to be rich and come here to gamble. This was a gambling den, not a charity hall. It was only right and proper to pay one's debts. Hurry up and return the money. Get lost. If you don't have money, just say it. Don't be unreasonable with me. After saying that, a few strong men dressed in coarse hemp clothes surrounded him. At that moment, Meng Liang was already irritated by the dealer's words. The frustration from his previous consecutive losses had been squeezed to the limit. Now he was being mocked by an ant that he had never looked down upon. How could the proud and spoiled Meng Liang tolerate this? How dare an ant that he had killed so casually treat him like this? They must be tired of living. Meng Liang was not someone who could tolerate easily. At that moment, Jiang Pingji guessed that the time was right. She stepped forward to stop him, but it was actually adding fuel to the fire. He seemed to be in a difficult position. She said with a hint of charity, "Cousin, don't bother with these commoners. I still have some silver here." Meng Liang's eyes were red. He glared at her as if she was his murderer and pushed her away. "Do you know who I am? Lowly commoner, I dare you to touch a single hair on my head." Meng Liang had been provoked in many ways. His eyes were filled with anger. How could he still be rational? Hearing his arrogant words, the dealer snorted coldly and mocked him. "I don't care if you are a dragon or a tiger. Since you are here, you must follow the rules. How dare you be rude when you don't have the money?" Meng Liang shouted at the thugs who were trying to surround him. "Get out of my way, lowly commoner. I am the descendant of Lord Meng. How dare you touch me?" Meng Liang raised his hand and swatted away one of the thug's hands. His snow-white face was already flushed with anger. It was no wonder he was furious to be treated like that by a lowly commoner. "Meng Zhan is my father." "Fine." Jiang Pingji, who was watching from the side, curled her lips into a smile. Meng Liang had finally said the two most important words. "Who is Meng Zhan? I have never heard of him." The dealer sneered and pointed at Meng Liang's nose. "How dare you call yourself the descendant of Lord Meng? Will Lord Meng's descendant be like you? You can't even afford to gamble. How dare you call yourself the descendant of Lord Meng? Arrest him." Nongqin's face turned pale. The thugs not only wanted to detain Meng Liang, but also her and her Langjun. Plang. Before Nongqin could come to her senses, one of the thugs who had reached out to her suddenly flew out as if he had been hit by a heavy punch. He hit a nearby gambling table and the betting money fell to the ground with a crisp sound. This turn of events scared everyone so much that they didn't come back to their senses. What happened? Jiang Pingji retracted her foot and smiled wickedly. "Don't. My servant is young and timid. Don't bully him." That kick was from her. It was so fast that no one could react. "What are you waiting for? Let's go." Jiang Pingji took out a long fan from her sleeve and slapped one of the thugs in the face. His face was bleeding and it hurt to look at. Meng Liang seemed to have just regained his composure, but he was not willing to run away like that. You unruly commoners. If you dare to fight again, I will ask the Meng army to chop you into human jerky. Everyone was confused by Jiang Pingji's sudden attack, but Meng Liang, their stupid teammate, kept provoking their anger. They were so angry that they couldn't care less if the three were the sons of the gentry. They just wanted to lock them up and talk about their next course of action. Jiang Pingji was at ease. Even though Nongqin was dragging her down, she could still walk as if she was taking a stroll in the park. However, due to her costume, she could not move her lower body too much. She had to rely on the strength of her hands. Jiang Pingji, who had undergone special training, knew the structure of the human body better than she did. She could easily dislocate the joints of the opponents. The gamblers on the first floor saw that something was wrong. They immediately stuffed the betting money into their pockets and planned to sneak away while the situation was still chaotic. The other gamblers had the same idea, and the scene became even more chaotic. Jiang Pingji protected Nongqin, but she was not as nice to Meng Liang. Meng Liang was so frightened by the scene that he came back to his senses. His cheeks were pale and he looked like a mess. Chapter 162. She said, "This won't do. I'm afraid none of us will be able to escape. I'll distract some of them. Take care, cousin." Meng Liang was furious as he ran. "I think you're using me as bait, aren't you?" Jiang Pingji smiled and said, "Cousin Meng Liang has been stupid for so long. I didn't expect him to be smart for once before he died." "What?" Meng Liang was shocked. The three of them had run into a dark alley and there was a pungent smell in the air. Just as he realized something was wrong, Jiang Pingji raised her hand and hit the back of his neck. Along with the pain, Meng Liang's vision was instantly shrouded in darkness. His consciousness quickly became hazy. Before he completely lost consciousness, he vaguely felt a sharp pain in his throat. His body involuntarily twitched twice. Nongqin was shocked, speechless, but the person who hit him did not seem to be scared. "Langjun, don't worry about him." Nongqin saw Jiang Pingji throw the unconscious Meng Liang on the ground like a piece of trash, and she was at a loss of what to do. Even though she did not like Meng Liang, he was still an important guest. If anything happened to him, there would be trouble. Who cares? Just run. Hold on to the gold in your arms. 10% of it will be your betrothal gift for your future husband. What? Nongqin was confused. Jiang Pingji smiled indifferently. She was annoyed that Nongqin was running too slowly, so she simply grabbed her hand and carried her up. Nongqin was screaming in surprise. Jiang Pingji put one hand on her shoulder and the other on her calf. Even though Nongqin was not fat, she still weighed more than 90 kilograms. She leaped onto the wall of the alley and with a few leaps, Jiang Pingji jumped into the deep alley nearby. Done. Jiang Pingji put down Nongqin, who was still in a daze. There was a hint of laughter in her voice, as if she had let go of all the pent-up frustration in her heart. She had planned to tease Meng Liang a little longer, but now? She changed her mind at the last minute. When Nongqin landed on the ground, she finally recovered from the dizzy state. She tilted her head and took a closer look. She could faintly see the outline of her Longjuan's face in the dark. He had run for a long distance with her in his arms, but his forehead was still fresh and his breathing was steady. Nongqin felt a little ashamed in her heart. She had been doing rough work since she was a child. She could eat a lot and was strong, but she could not compare with her pampered Langjun. Will Madame blame you for leaving Miss Biao behind? If he spouts any nonsense, the gamblers will come to the Lu mansion. Nongqin's face turned pale. Jiang Pingji snorted coldly. Isn't our Lady Biao by my side? As for whether or not Meng Liang will talk nonsense, don't worry, he can't speak or write for the time being. Be a good boy and wait at the gambling house. She had many tricks up her sleeves. She could temporarily paralyze a person's arm or make them unable to speak or write. It was very simple. How could Meng Liang compete with her? She could toy with that brat to death even with her eyes closed. Right by her side, Nongqin could not help but look around. There were only the two of them. Where was the third person? Was there a third person? Suddenly she felt the air around her was a little cold. A creepy feeling rushed from the soles of her feet to her brain. Let's go buy some women's clothing. You can wear it and temporarily play the role of Lady Biao, Jiang Pingji said. Nongqin finally realized what Jiang Pingji meant. She wanted her to pretend to be Lady Biao? But won't my identity be exposed? Many people have already seen the appearance of young Miss Cousin. Nongqin felt it was tricky, but it was her Longjuan's request. He had to comply. However, it seemed that even the heavens were against Jiang Pingji. Just when she felt a little better, the system beeped. System. Beginning self-examination. Scanning mission. Beep. Scan successful. Mission established. Meng Liang, son of Meng Zhan, chief of Meng County in Song Prefecture, is in danger. Please save him in 2 hours. When the mission is completed, the host will receive the reward of Willow Slender Waist. If the mission fails, the host will receive a level 5 electric shock as punishment. Jiang Pingji's face froze, and then a bloodthirsty smile appeared on her face. System, are you asking for a beating? The system explained frantically, its voice sounding panicked and helpless. No, host. Listen to me. After the real-time mission is loaded, it will be automatically assigned to the host based on what you encounter. It will be automatically assigned. But you have to believe that completing the mission will only benefit you. This is carefully calculated and it will not harm the host's interests. I've looked at the back-end data. Killing Meng Liang will cause you great losses. What are you talking about? If you can understand me, then shut up. Jiang Pingji was furious. She was already annoyed by the system and now she felt even more disgusted. The system lost its temper when Jiang Pingji yelled at it. Host, although I am your system, I hope you can respect me. We need to support each other, not drag each other down. The calculation of the human brain will never be as good as the optical computer system. After analysis, we concluded that saving Meng Liang is the best choice. Jiang Pingji snorted. I said shut up. The system was frustrated by her stubbornness, but there was nothing it could do. If you don't carry out the mission, you will receive a 2-hour countdown. When the time is up, you will automatically fail the mission. Do you understand? If you fail the mission, you will be punished with a level 5 electric shock. That will cost you your life. Then I'll just die. Jiang Pingji's words pushed back the system's attempts to dissuade her. At that moment, Meng Liang, who had fainted on the ground, was captured and tied up. Have you found the other two? The one who won a lot of money ran away, while the one who lost to the casino and owed a lot of money was caught. What was going on? The owner of the casino was so angry that his face contorted into a dark purple hue. The few hired thugs of the gambling house were trembling with fear like quails. They had already tried their best to chase after them, but not only were the two slippery fellows slippery, they seemed to have vanished into thin air without a trace. Not to mention people, they didn't even catch a single strand of hair. They really couldn't understand. That alley was clearly a dead end, so how did the two of them escape? Chapter 163. The thug was furious, but he didn't dare to say anything. The casino had been making dirty money in Hejian County for years. He was the one who manipulated the gamblers and forced many families to separate. How many gamblers lost their fortune and lost their composure? How many wives and daughters of the gamblers were sold into prostitution? It could be said that the establishment and operation of the casino were built with the blood and tears of the gamblers' families. Every coin and every cent was stained with blood. It was not clean at all. Unexpectedly, the boss of the casino was blinded by the eagle's peck. He was tricked by a young boy. That was more than 4,000 taels of silver. Ordinary people couldn't make that much money in a few lifetimes. In the face of the furious boss, there was finally a bold person who bit the bullet and asked, "Boss, what should we do with the one who got caught?" "Lock him up in the woodshed. Do you want him to be treated like the god of fortune?" The boss was so angry that he wanted to stomp on Meng Liang's head, but he restrained himself. Somewhere else, Jiang Pingji took Nongqin to buy a set of women's clothing. Then she put on a thick bamboo hat to cover her face. "Liangjin, is this okay?" Nongqin had never worn such fine clothes in her life. She was so excited that she didn't know what to say. She blushed and lowered her head. She didn't dare to look up at others. "It's a little short, but it's the only ready-made clothes that fit. It's okay." In ancient times, there was no such thing as a ready-made clothing store. Most families would have their women go out to the streets to buy suitable materials and sew them into clothes. Some families would even grow their own raw materials and slowly turn them into cloth. After dyeing them, they would then make clothes. Even so, there were some places where ready-made clothes could be bought, such as the large-scale cloth stores. The cloth stores sold cloth, but they could also customize the clothes. Sometimes, in order to give customers a more intuitive introduction, they would make some ready-made clothes and display them in the shop. The clothes could also be sold, but that was not the main business of the cloth store. Jiang Pingji took Nongqin around the clothing store and bought a set of fine, high-quality clothes that fit her figure. He asked Nongqin to put on the bamboo hat and bought 2 bolts of good material for inner clothes for Xunmei Takshu. Jiang Pingji didn't want to be special. Nongqin bought the clothes because of special circumstances, not because she was biased. But for the sake of fairness, she couldn't ignore the other 2 maids in the yard. If he gave them other materials, even if they were made into clothes, they wouldn't be able to wear them. It would be better to buy the material used to make undergarments, which would be more comfortable to wear. Scope. Jiang Pingji said. Nongqin nodded and pulled the white veil over the bamboo hat to prevent her face from being exposed. The system trembled as it spoke. Host, are you really not going to consider it? Jiang Pingji had calmed down from her previous anger. She asked seriously, can you uninstall the real-time mission board after it's loaded? Don't give me these messy tasks because even if you give them to me I won't do them. The system said bitterly, I'm sorry, host. The loading board can only be uninstalled after the next major upgrade. In other words, before you level up for the second time, will these quests continue to be issued out of nowhere? The system carefully looked at her face to make sure she didn't have any intention of scolding her. Then it spoke shakily. Not constantly. According to the manual of the board, the real-time missions are issued in a regular pattern. For example, if the host encounters something important, the board will calculate the best outcome and route and then issue the mission. The host will receive a certain reward after completing the mission. If the host doesn't complete the mission or fails the mission, the reward will be exchanged for the corresponding energy value as a punishment. Jiang Pingji was silent for a while. When the system thought she was ignoring it, she asked a question. System, tell me clearly once again, what kind of system are you? I want to know your full name. The system was puzzled. That question was nonsense, wasn't it? But considering the host's temperament, it felt that if it didn't answer, it would probably be scolded again. So, it honestly said, the full name is Multidimensional Palace Intrigue Streaming System. Yes, you're the Multidimensional Palace Intrigue Streaming System. The loading of the real-time mission board is also to serve the main plot. This can be seen from the mission reward, Willow Slender Waist, slender and enchanting. Is that useful? Of course, men like slender waists, and having a willow slender waist can indeed make men linger on you for a second longer, but Jiang Pingji's voice was very calm, but it was this calmness that made the system's scalp tingle. I want to kill all my enemies and become the emperor, not sleep with all the men and let them help me ascend the throne. Becoming the emperor and becoming the emperor's woman, how could the two be the same? So now, system, you can shut up. The system didn't dare to make a sound. Jiang Pingji didn't have such a strong desire to cause trouble in the beginning. He was completely forced by the stupid system and the culture of this even more stupid era. She didn't want to be changed, so she could only think of ways to change others. As for the 5th-level electric shock punishment that the system mentioned, did it really think that the Federation's training methods were child's play? 90% of the so-called 5th-level electric shock punishment was a threat. She knew what the other 10% was. Because she knew it, she was not afraid. It was still the same thing. Playing tricks with her? She could play with it with her eyes closed. Intelligence was a real weakness and it couldn't be changed by leveling up. But a 5th-level electric shock punishment? Jiang Pingji's eyes flickered and the corners of her lips curled up. This was a good opportunity. There were many training courses for genetic warriors, but the core of it was to stimulate the muscles with external force. The system's punishment couldn't really use electricity. After all, the human body was different. It was most likely to use some kind of energy to stimulate the nerves and muscles of the body to achieve the same punishment as a 5th-level electric shock. If that was the case, it would be a good training opportunity. Jiang Pingji brought Nongqin back to the loos and sent her to the outer courtyard where Meng Liang lived. Stay here for a few days. You can go back to normal after the storm blows over. Nongqin nodded. At that moment there was a voice coming closer. Langjun, you're finally back. If you didn't come back, I would have gone out to look for you. The person stopped abruptly and stared at Nongqin and Jiang Pingji. It was Meng Liang's servant who thought that his Langjun was back. Seeing the servant running over, Jiang Pingji suddenly smiled. Chapter 164. Meng Liang's servant was smarter than his master. Or rather, he was more perceptive. He could feel that danger was approaching. He was like a croaking frog that had been targeted by a poisonous snake. His life and death could be decided in an instant. The manservant tried his best to suppress the creepy feeling. He stopped in his tracks and bowed to Jiang Pingji. He bit the bullet and asked, "Do you know where my wife is?" Jiang Pingji laughed softly. Her mellow voice was different from that of a young man. It sounded more like it came from her throat. It sounded mellow. She said darkly, "Do you want to know where your Langjun went? If you're so curious, why don't you go to hell and ask him?" After the manservant heard this, he instantly shivered. His hands and feet turned cold and the fear in his heart exploded in an instant. He was so scared that his legs went soft and he directly knelt down in front of her feet. His knees happened to press on a few protruding stones and immediately a bruise appeared. His thin lips trembled. He couldn't say a word. After a long time he took a deep breath. He said dryly, "Please don't joke around. My wife was fine." As he spoke, he slowly got up and secretly took a few steps back. The grudge between the Lus and the Mengs was irreconcilable. It was not impossible for Lu Shi to kill someone. The manservant was so anxious that his eyes turned red. "Why would I joke around? Since the villain dies because he talks too much, I'll let you die with regrets." Jiang Pingji took a step forward. The manservant froze. He quickly turned around and tried to run into the house. Nongqing was anxious. She wanted to catch the manservant when she saw him trying to escape. But someone was faster than her. As if there was a gust of black wind, Jiang Pingji had already caught up with the servant who was trying to escape. She pinched the servant's slender neck with one hand and gradually exerted force with her 5 fingers. The servant felt that it was getting more and more difficult for him to breathe. He tried his best to pry her hand away with both of his hands. His feet rubbed against the ground. At first he struggled intensely, but as time went by, the intensity gradually decreased. Sha 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 sha. His legs, which were rubbing against the ground, went completely limp. His hands were still holding onto Jiang Pingji's wrists. His eyes were wide open, bulging so much that it seemed like they were about to jump out of their sockets and explode in the next second. His face had slowly turned from dark purple to green. Nongqing saw the servant struggling hard before he died. His eyes were almost popping out of his eye sockets. She was so nervous that her breath quickened. She felt like she had fallen into an ice cellar, as if the night wind around her was strangely cold. "Are you scared?" Nongqing stood rooted to the ground and heard Jiang Pingji's gentle question. The system asked her in a low voice, "Okay, I don't care about that. But, what do you mean by killing him to show me? I don't know what your previous host was like, but I know one thing. Don't treat me like a clay figurine. System, you have done more than one thing to disgust me. I hope there won't be another mission like today." The system was speechless. As I said, this kind of real-time mission is issued randomly and automatically. I can't control it. If you don't want to do it, just say no. Anyway, if you don't want to do the mission, how can I force you? Hearing the system's words, Jiang Pingji suddenly smiled. Her smile was full of inexplicable meaning. The system added, "But if you fail the mission, you will also have to bear the punishment. Don't blame me for not reminding you if you can't bear it." At that time, 2 hours had passed since Jiang Pingji refused to do the mission. Chapter 165. Jiang Pingji listened coldly to the system's countdown, but her mood was not affected at all. "Xuanmei, if you hear anything tonight, don't come in to investigate." Xuanmei sat outside the door, a neatly folded mattress beside her. The mattress was used by the maids to keep warm during the night. Xuanmei was surprised to hear Jiang Pingji's instructions, but she still agreed. "Yes. Don't worry, Langjun." Jiang Pingji replied softly. The system was humane enough to give Jiang Pingji 3 minutes to prepare. Jiang Pingji unhurriedly took off her outer garment, leaving only her moon-white inner garment. She sat on the mattress and calmly waited for the system's punishment. 3, 2, 1. Punishment commencing. As the system's cold countdown ended, in that instant, a strange and explosive energy instantly enveloped his entire body. From the surface of his skin, it fiercely flowed throughout his body like a hot knife through butter. Every muscle in his body seemed to have been violently crushed by something. Jiang Pingji was forced to bend over from the pain. She lay on the mattress making only a slight sound. As the explosive energy spread, her heart beat at an unimaginable speed, as if it was about to jump out of her throat. Her blood flowed faster and hot sweat flowed out of her pores. In less than 2 or 3 breaths, the place where she was lying actually became damp. The sweat on her back and shoulder blades had already soaked her clothes, and the excess sweat slid down her skin and dripped onto the bed. To be honest, the system's punishment was not on the same level as Jiang Pingji's previous training. In terms of cruelty, the system's punishment was at the most ordinary level, while the Federation's training was at the hellish level. Comparing the two, Jiang Pingji would rather go through the Federation's training once more. She had been careless and overestimated herself. She had forgotten that this body belonged to an ancient woman. Without any specific training, the ancient woman's performance in all aspects could only be described as low, let alone compared to her previous self. Lu Lanting's body would collapse under the same pain, but Jiang Pingji's previous body would not be affected. Even though Lu Lanting's body had an additional 31 points of fusion force, it was only enough to upgrade the body from a weakling to a burly man. In the end, it was still a normal person. In terms of numbers, it was not even comparable to a genetic warrior. Under such circumstances, Jiang Pingji was faced with a very awkward situation. His spirit and will were strong enough, but his body had already reached the limit of collapse. Her face was slightly twisted because of the pain, but the corners of her lips curled up into a twisted and strange smile, with a hint of mockery. Although she didn't know how the system graded the pain of the electric shock, after experiencing it herself, she was very clear about one thing. The so-called level 5 electric shock just happened to be the limit of this body's endurance. If it was just a little bit heavier, the body would collapse first and die. From the start of the punishment, the system had entered a state of indifference as a bystander, coldly watching as she accepted the punishment, waiting for her to give in and beg for mercy. Wasn't it good for the system and the host to mutually benefit each other? Why was he so violent and uncooperative? Wasn't this harming the interests of both parties? As a system, it was very certain of Jiang Pingji's ability. If it ignored her bad temper, it could not find any fault with her. For a system, especially one that had a clear purpose to nurture, a stupid host was indeed easy to control, but it was also tiring to bring them along. Not only did he have to be a father and a mother, he had to calculate every step for them, just like a nanny or a wet nurse. Therefore, basically every system yearned to meet a host that was smart, motivated, and easy to control. However, Jiang Pingji did not fall into either category. She was smart and motivated, but her only fatal flaw was that she had a strong sense of self and would not allow herself to be controlled by others. A host that refused to follow the system's orders was more annoying than those who were too lazy to use their brains. At that moment, Lu Lanting's body was already on the verge of collapse. If not for Jiang Pingji's strong will, it would have been useless. She secretly told herself, "Hang in there, Jiang Pingji." The genetic warrior training method developed by the Federation essentially used external forces to stimulate the activity of muscle cells. Although this strange energy had caused her to suffer greatly, after she had endured it, the benefits would be huge. The system would not let her die. If she did, the system would suffer a great loss. However, not letting her die and not letting her suffer were two completely different concepts. She knew very well that the system was using this punishment as a warning. If she did not want to suffer anymore, she had to complete the system's mission obediently. That was unfortunate. Jiang Pingji was a tough bone that no one could bite. Who would dare to bite? Be careful or you might break a mouthful of teeth. The system watched coldly from the side. Did not seem anxious at all. Lu Shi's body data was being monitored in real time. He was only at the 0 point. It was fine as long as he was still alive. 3 minutes was not a long time, but for Jiang Pingji, every second felt like a year. 1 minute ago, Lu Shi's body data was in a scary red color, which meant that his body was on high alert. 1 minute later, the system was still not anxious, but it did not notice that the red color of the data had faded. Chapter 166. The system was dumbfounded. It immediately opened Lu Shi's data panel. Jiang Pingji licked her dry lips and said, "It's only been 3 minutes. I'm not satisfied yet." Thus what the system saw was this data panel. Name, Jiang Pingji Lu Shi Lanting, also known as Lu Lanting. Base strength, 12, strength fusion plus 39, gender, female disguised as a man. Replaced her deceased brother Lu Lanting, age 41, 12, born in the 3rd year of Tianwu's flower festival birth. The second son of the Lu family in Hejian County. Fiancé, Wei Jingxian, the second daughter of the Wei family in Hejian County. Specialties, 6 arts of rites, beginner, combat expert, analysis expert, other abilities temporary. Attributes, charm hidden 33, appearance 75. Channel, streaming activated, host level 2. Compared to the initial data, Jiang Pingji's hidden charm value had unknowingly increased to 33 points. Her appearance value did not change. The streamer's level had risen to level 2 because of the upgrade card, but that was not the main point. The main point was the integration of force. Strength fusion plus 39. When Jiang Pingji first arrived in this world, her strength fusion was 30 points. She continued to use points, but it only increased by 1 point. Before the system's punishment, her strength fusion was 31 points. But now, 39. That was not all. Her unshakable base strength of 5 points had increased to 12 points. Strength fusion was a combination of her previous life strength and brought it to this world. It was a cheat, but the base strength was the body's own strength. An increase in the base strength meant that all aspects of the body had improved. That was why Jiang Pingji regretfully said that 3 minutes was too short. System. Jiang Pingji called out to the system in the quiet room. Speak. What's the matter? She smiled wickedly and supported her face with her hand. When will the next real-time mission be issued? The system was like gunpowder whose fuse had been ignited, instantly exploding. Jiang Pingji. The system spat out word by word, gritting its teeth. That's enough. Jiang Pingji said righteously, no, this is only the first time. How can that be? Come at me if you can. Everyone was hurting each other. The last time he had fused with his martial power, his body had been exhausted to the extreme. However, the genetic warrior training this time felt completely different. There was still a faint pain in his limbs, but he felt an indescribable sense of comfort from the inside out. His mind was also very clear. She missed it. Jiang Pingji wiped the sweat off her face and took off her inner clothes. She rolled them into a ball and wiped the sweat off her skin. Then she put on the clean inner clothes and left the dirty ones on the clothes rack for the maids to clean up the next day. Xuan Mei. Jiang Pingji adjusted her voice and tried to return it to normal. Jiang Pingji was not surprised at all. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Last night was a good opportunity. Not only could I get the Lu Manor out of this, but I could also trick Meng Liang. I also made a small fortune. Jiang Pingji smiled and her eyes curved. I guess what happened last night has spread far and wide. According to Meng Hun's ability, they will know about Meng Liang by the afternoon. Do you think we should wait for him tonight? Wait for him? Who was the rabbit? Needless to say, it was Meng Hun. How can you be sure it's tonight? Qiguan Rang asked. Jiang Pingji said, if not tonight, should we wait for a few days? Don't forget that when Meng Liang left Song Prefecture, he brought his entourage with him. If he did not think he was smart and dump his entourage, he would not be in this situation. Now the gambling house is saying that a kid named Meng Liang is causing trouble. As long as Meng Liang's entourage is not deaf, he will find out sooner or later. As long as Meng Hun was not stupid, he should have thought of that. If he did not capture Meng Liang and hesitated for a moment, Meng Liang would have been rescued by his entourage. Qiguan Rang said unhappily, it seems like everything is still within your calculations. But, didn't they agree yesterday to take their time and plan things out slowly? Why did she do all this after one night? Awful. She almost ruined the good situation. Fortunately, she knew what she was doing and she had a corresponding plan to deal with the sudden changes in her actions. The pace was a bit fast, but as long as the final result was the same as expected, he would turn a blind eye. Chapter 167. Move faster. Otherwise it will really fly away. Qiguan Rang tapped his feather fan on his knee. His expression was serious, as if he was thinking about something serious. If Meng Hun really kidnaps Meng Liang tonight, what are you going to do? In other words, what excuse could Jiang Pingji use to appear in front of Meng Hun without arousing his suspicion? Jiang Pingji was prepared for that. As you know, Meng Hun already knows where Meng Liang is. He also knows that Meng Liang is in the Lu residence. From his point of view, Meng Liang has a close relationship with the Lu mansion. Since that's the case, I'll use the excuse that Lady Cousin is capricious and sneaked out of the mansion to play. She didn't return for the whole night. The Lu mansion was anxious and sent people out to look for her. Coincidentally, they bumped into Meng Hun's group. Isn't that good? Using rescuing Meng Liang as an excuse, he would secretly help Meng Hun take Meng Liang away without arousing the slightest suspicion. After hearing this, Qiguan Rang's thin lips, which had always been tightly pursed, could not help but twitch. As shameless as he was, sometimes he had to admire Jiang Pingji, who was even more shameless and proud of it. He also pitied Meng Liang. Being schemed against by the person in front of him once wasn't enough. In such a short period of time he was schemed against again and again. In the end he was even being squeezed out of his final value. Jiang Pingji said, "Tonight let's wait for a good show. Wenjing, do you want to come? We've reserved the best seat for you." Qiguan Rang rejected him mercilessly. He said expressionlessly, "No, I'm old and tired. I don't want to torment myself." Compared to jumping up and down without any peace, he preferred to squat comfortably in one place. He didn't want excitement, only stability. "That's a pity." Jiang Pingji picked up the teacup and took a sip. She said to the system, "It's almost time. Start the semi-interactive streaming mission. The title remains the same. Just put, 'How to Kill Meng Liang Gracefully Without Wasting Time.'" Her relationship with the system was very stiff. But due to the current situation where the two of them could not be separated, while she was wary of the system, she also had to constantly pay attention to its little tricks. She tried her best to take the initiative and control the rhythm of the situation so as to prevent the situation from getting out of control. The system wanted to throw a tantrum, but its job was to livestream. If Jiang Pingji really did not livestream, its losses would be incalculable. He could go against anything, but there was no need to go against the popularity points. Therefore, when Jiang Pingji suggested starting a semi-interactive livestream mode and entering the main topic of the mission, it reacted immediately. Tens of thousands of viewers flooded into the livestream room in an instant. Another person said, "Hey, it's not that the kid doesn't want to tell us. It was clear that there was something wrong with his throat. He couldn't use his hands and couldn't write. The strange thing was that the doctor came over to take a look and said that there was nothing wrong with him." This made the boss very angry. Meng Liang had lost a debt of several thousand taels of silver, but his partner had won more than 4,000 taels of silver from the gambling house and escaped. Was the gambling house losing money? It was a small business and didn't accept credit. He didn't expect that after working so hard to run such a gambling house and going against his conscience to earn so much black-hearted money, he would be tricked by a few young lads in the end. All the money he had painstakingly earned over the years went into someone else's pocket. It would be strange if the gambling house owner wasn't furious. They forced Meng Liang to ask about Jiang Pingji and Nongqing's whereabouts, but the sissy kid was still putting on airs and wouldn't talk. In the beginning, the owner of the casino and the thugs thought Meng Liang was just being stubborn, so they gave him a good beating. Meng Liang screamed in pain after being hit twice. He didn't look like someone with a backbone at all. He didn't even beg for mercy. His watery eyes were swollen from crying. The thug from before asked, "Isn't this kid pretending?" The thug rolled his eyes in disdain. "Pretending? How is this pretending?" Every time he was hit, he would howl like a pig being slaughtered. He knelt when he was told to. His knees were as soft as mud. Did he have any backbone? You didn't see him crying while hugging the boss's leg. Girls aren't that weak. But didn't we say that the kid might be from one of those noble families? The thug continued to roll his eyes. Have you seen any noble as weak as the one inside? Even though I don't know how to read, I know that the real nobles would rather have their heads chopped off than kneel and beg. So the one inside is a fake. Because it was the night shift, the thug went home to sleep during the day and missed a lot of things. Speaking of this, the thug suddenly chuckled. He put one hand on his partner's shoulder and whispered mysteriously, "Of course he's a fake. Have you seen any noble more coquettish than those young men in the south courtyard? That face is as beautiful as a fairy, but it's so coquettish inside." The boss was so angry that he asked his brothers to teach him a lesson and make him give in. Guess what happened in the end? In the woodshed, the unconscious Meng Liang slowly woke up. When he heard the conversation, he was so angry that he almost broke his teeth. Then what does boss plan to do with him? Meng Liang heard another person say, "What else can we do?" If he couldn't catch the other two and the one inside couldn't say anything, what was the point of keeping him alive? Chapter 169. Jiang Pingji was good at hiding. She was dressed in black and had a mask over her face. With the cover of the night, she had an easier time. But she was not there to save people, so when she jumped over the wall to enter the yard, she deliberately left an obvious flaw. Xianxia. I like the streamer's posture of jumping over the wall. It's like watching a martial arts movie. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie. I'm rubbing my face, but I'm still looking forward to the streamer's elegant qinggong. Although it looks cool now, it feels too down to earth. Normally, shouldn't the streamer just spread her arms and fly? Ian. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, you're not talking about a person but a bird, right? Lao Ciji Lianmeng. I feel like I'm the only one in the entire streaming room who saw through the streamer's other move. What was the truth? Jiang Pingji's seemingly unintentional or even deliberate move before she jumped over the wall. She could have climbed over the wall without alerting anyone, but she still had to look around. She knew that if she took a small step out of the shadow of the wall, her body would be exposed to the relatively bright moonlight. Even if it was only for a short period of time, ordinary people would not be able to see it. But Meng Hun and his men had been guarding the back door of the gambling house for a while. How could they not see it? Oh no. Someone with suspicious movements has gone in. The scout beside Meng Hun said in a low voice at the same time. They all looked gloomy. Is it the Lus or the Meng's entourage? Meng Hun analyzed. The Lus are a famous aristocratic family in Hejian County. If they wanted to save people, they wouldn't have done it so sneakily. They could have just found an excuse to break into the gambling house. They must be the Meng's entourage for being so cautious and skilled. County Chief, should we go in now? The scout asked in a low voice. Originally, they had already sent one of their men in, hoping to take down the guards without alerting the gambling house. Then they could work together to snatch Meng Liang from the inside. But now they couldn't wait any longer. If they ran into the black shadow just now, wouldn't they have to fight? Meng Hun hated Meng Liang to the core, but he would not deny the ability of the Meng's army or the Meng's entourage. If they ran into each other, Meng Hun would lose another of his men. Thinking of this, Meng Hun waved his hand and said gloomily, "Let's go." Meng Hun was tall and sturdy. He could reach the edge of the wall just by raising his arm, so it was the easiest for him to climb over the wall. After running 2 steps, he quickly stepped on the wall with the tips of his feet and climbed up a few steps. He raised his hand to support himself on the edge of the wall and turned his body sideways to enter the wall in the most effortless way. The others also did the same, jumping in one after another without making any noise. Jiang Pingji was hidden in the dark. Seeing that they had all climbed in, her lips curled up under the black veil. The show had officially begun. Xinghua. #StarryEye. I'm a newbie in the live broadcast room. Who was the one who led the team to climb over the wall? Canteen Daffin Auntie. Although I'm a veteran, I still don't know who he is. Lao Ciji Lianmeng. I've sorted out the content of the host's live stream, the people she met, and the things she experienced. I've made a rough relationship table. According to the plot, that person should be the unlucky captain. Yen, captain? The unlucky guy who was cuckolded by Meng Liang and lived on the Huluan beer grassland? Lao Ciji Lianmeng. According to my analysis, this is the most likely person. But we can't rule out the possibility that the host hooked up with a newbie when she wasn't streaming yesterday. If that's the case, that person's identity is a mystery. Meng Hun and the others soon noticed that something was wrong. The place was too quiet. His nerves were taut, and an ominous premonition surged in his heart. Could it be that Meng Liang had really been enlightened? Was he trying to lure them over so that he could kill them all at once? Just as Meng Hun was hesitating and preparing for the worst, 2 strange objects caught his attention. They were hiding in the dark where the human eye could easily miss them. The shadows were heavy and hard to spot. He's still alive, but the back of his neck was hit hard. He won't wake up for a while. The scout received Meng Hun's signal and went forward to investigate. He found that the 2 objects were not objects at all. They were 2 thugs from the gambling house. The skin on the back of the neck was bruised, which showed how strong the attacker was. If the attacker had been any stronger, they would have been dead. Meng Hun said, "Let's go." The place where the thugs were supposed to be standing guard was empty. Then where did they go? Meng Hun found a few thugs who had been knocked out and thrown into the dark. He was shocked. He had run into a master. The marks are the same and the speed is very fast. It seems to be the work of the same person. These thugs didn't even have time to react before they were knocked out. The scout said with pity. Such a talent, but he is working for the Mengs. If it was the Mengs in the Xia dynasty during the reign of Duke Meng, it would be worthy of admiration. But the Mengs now? His loyalty was all for a dog. The county captain was willing to sacrifice his life for the Mengs, but how did the Mengs repay him? They allowed Meng Liang, the bastard, to kill the county captain's wife and daughter. Meng Zhan, the bastard who gave birth to Meng Liang, was not human either. As a father, his son had made a huge mistake. Instead of thinking about how to teach him a lesson, he tried to cover up the fact that the county captain's wife and daughter were killed. If Meng Liang hadn't spilled the beans, the county captain would still be in the dark. That's enough. Meng Hun wasn't a foolishly loyal person, but he didn't like to belittle his old boss. There was only a wall between them. Jiang Pingji sat on the eaves and overheard their conversation. Her eyes flickered slightly. Under the eaves, the thugs guarding the woodshed were yawning. They looked very tired. One of them patted the shoulder of one of them and mumbled, "Keep an eye on them for me. I'm going to take a nap." "Don't worry. Not many people come here. If the boss comes to check on us, I'll call you." The gambling house had some prestige in the vicinity. Normal hooligans did not dare to cause trouble there. The hired thugs only needed to guard the door and occasionally go out to collect debts. Their work was still very leisurely, except when the owner came down to patrol and was on guard duty, they could slack off. As soon as the two of them finished talking, they saw a shadow flash in front of them and a cold wind blew. One of them raised his hand and rubbed his arm, shivering as he said, Did you see anything just now?" The other man's teeth were chattering as he stuttered. "You also saw a shadow?" Chapter 170. They didn't have to be afraid of ghosts knocking on their door if they didn't do anything shameful. But did they dare to promise that they hadn't done anything shameful? Instead of saying that they saw a ghost, it was more accurate to say that there was a ghost living in their hearts. While they were panicking, the back of their necks suddenly suffered an unspeakable blow. In the next second, the pain spread throughout their bodies. Their eyes were filled with darkness. Before they could open their mouths, their eyelids felt as heavy as lead. It was as if the world had been turned upside down. Before they could even realize that they were dizzy, their consciousness had already sunk into darkness. Thud. It was the dull sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. Jiang Pingji was hanging upside down on the eaves. She used strength from her waist to climb up the eaves. She loosened her legs and landed easily. Jiang Pingji kicked the two unconscious thugs to the side. She skillfully removed all the door handles from the door. She pushed the wooden door open and clearly saw Meng Liang curled up on the ground. Meng Liang was also awake, but the anxiety and fear in his heart had reached its peak. When the wooden door was opened, the cold wind from outside poured in. His skin shivered and he had goosebumps. With the dim moonlight outside, Meng Liang could barely see the figure of the person. He was delighted, thinking that it was his entourage who had come to rescue him. He regained his usual arrogance and showed an angry face to Jiang Pingji. Although he could only make vague sounds, it was obvious from his angry tone that the words he wanted to say were not pleasant to the ear. Jiang Pingji's eyes showed concern. She was not angry at Meng Liang's attitude at all. Just as she was about to go forward and untie the ropes on his hands and feet, a gust of cold wind blew behind her. The audience in the streaming room all screamed. The bullet screen was filled with reminders, afraid that Jiang Pingji would be ambushed and hurt. "Dashu Xiaobing. There's someone behind you." As the cold wind blew, Jiang Pingji bent over and touched the knot of the ropes with her fingertips. Seeing that Jiang Pingji was about to be stabbed in the back, she suddenly moved sideways. The sharp blade did not hit her but Meng Liang's arm. Blood splashed everywhere. Meng Liang felt the pain and opened his mouth to let out a strange and hoarse howl. Meng Hun and his comrades fought together, so they had a tacit understanding of each other. Even without any verbal communication, The others already knew what Meng Hun was planning. Meng Hun understood. Meng Hun entangled Jiang Pingji so that she would not have the time to worry about Meng Liang. The others took advantage of the chaos to kidnap Meng Liang. The people in the live streaming room were in an uproar. Yu Yeqing, F*Z one more? How shameless. Hit me if you don't like it. Be careful, streamer. These people are trying to kidnap Meng Liang. Liuezi Sando. Streamer, I'll give him a kick to end his family line. How dare he beat me up? The viewers in the streaming room were so anxious that they wished they could smash their keyboards and climb into the screen to help Jiang Pingji. Even though they were all weaklings, they were still very strong. Do you believe that a MT tie-crushing top could smash someone until their spleen bled? Meng Hun thought that Jiang Pingji was a member of the Mengs, so he didn't kill her for the sake of their old friendship. But the fact was that Meng Hun couldn't beat Jiang Pingji even if he tried his best. Now that he was showing mercy, he couldn't do anything to her. While dodging Meng Hun's knife, Jiang Pingji also stopped others from trying to kidnap Meng Liang. Meng Liang, who was the target of the two sides, had already put away his arrogance. He tried to shrink his neck, afraid that Meng Hun's knife would fall on him. That knife really hurt. He didn't know how much blood he had lost. When he was safe, he would punish the squire who had come to save him. The Mengs didn't feed useless people. They had given him food and shelter for so many years, but in the end he couldn't even protect him and got injured. What was the point of keeping such useless people? He wouldn't be grateful for the squire who had risked his life to save him because it was his duty. If he did well, he wouldn't be rewarded. If he didn't do well, he would be punished. The Mengs fed them, so their lives belonged to the Mengs. Not only did they fail to protect him, but they also got him injured. Meng Hun was entangled with Jiang Pingji, but he was from the army. The so-called martial arts were used to kill enemies. His moves were big and quick, so it was easy for him to be at a disadvantage when he met someone who was agile. He showed mercy to Jiang Pingji so he couldn't keep her busy. It wasn't a good idea to continue like this. Jiang Pingji thought about it and deliberately showed an opening. She took out a pile of firewood in the woodshed and pretended to attack Meng Hun's companion. Meng Hun saw that and chose to protect his companion without thinking. But the next second he thought, oh no. His wrist holding the knife was hit hard and his arm went numb. He couldn't help but let go of the knife, and it was instantly taken away by the man in black. Almost at the same time his knees were attacked and he subconsciously bent his knees. He was in a half-kneeling position. His arms were locked behind his back and his shoulders were still heavy. He tried to stand up, but he couldn't. Don't move. If you move, his neck will be in danger. Jiang Pingji held the knife against Meng Hun's neck, and Meng Liang had been taken by someone else. The two sides were in a stalemate. I dare you to move. Chapter 171. Meng Hun and even Meng Liang were dumbfounded, not to mention the audience in the live broadcast room. Did he say that? Meng Liang did say that, but not to Jiang Pingji. He said it to his second wife, Gu Zhen. Jiang Pingji didn't care who she said it to. She said it anyway, and it wasn't considered a lie. Meng Hun did not suspect that Jiang Pingji was making things up. Instead, he was sure that Meng Liang was telling lies. He laughed so hard that he forgot to hide his voice. You are a living Buddha. How could you be blinded by such a villain? Jiang Pingji suddenly remembered something when she heard the familiar voice. She turned Meng Hun's face to take a closer look. Then she showed an angry expression. She asked in a low voice, how could it be you? Meng Hun did not answer. Instead he asked, how did this bastard frame me? Why would I want to frame him? And what would I use to frame Meng Liang? Wasn't this bastard responsible for the death of my wife and daughter? How dare he lie to me? Jiang Pingji looked at Meng Liang coldly and then at Meng Hun, who was full of hatred. She was hesitant. At this moment, a series of footsteps came from outside. Everyone in the woodshed tensed up. Jiang Pingji had no choice but to take a deep breath and say in a stiff voice, we can't stay here for long. Let's go somewhere else. Even so, she did not let go of the knife that was pointed at Meng Hun's neck. Meng Hun's subordinates did not dare to act rashly. Meng Liang's brain was not good, but his intuition was not bad. Whether it was Meng Hun on the left who had killed his wife and daughter, or Wuxia on the right who had deliberately set him up and humiliated him in the gambling house, both of them were black-hearted and had no good intentions towards him. Unfortunately, he could not speak or write. Otherwise, he would have seen through Lu Shi's disguise. It's safe here. No one will come to disturb us for the time being. Now you have enough time to tell me the truth. I hate lies and betrayals. Her voice was cold as she said to Meng Hun, "Previously, I thought you were a desperate refugee who had to leave your homeland. Now that I think about it, it was just a trick you set up to get close to me and extract information, right?" Jiang Pingji hadn't streamed yesterday, so the viewers in the streaming room didn't know how good her acting skills were. They comforted her one after another. "Ian, host, don't cry. Don't be sad. The stinky man is too cunning. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie, poor streamer. She's been cheated. I feel like I've been F***ed. So I don't feel bad. Xian, yeah, don't feel bad. We will support you. Let this person go to hell." Apart from the naive audience and the newbies who didn't understand the situation, there was another group of people who had a different attitude. Lao Cg Lianmeng, I'll bet one spicy stick that the streamer is cheating us. Nongfu Shangquan Yudiangshuan, life is like a drama. It all depends on acting skills. After the last time, I no longer believe in the host's integrity. The audience in the live broadcast room was impressed. One by one they scratched their ears and cheeks. Some of them had seen through the truth, but most of them still sympathized with the streamer. Jiang Pingji accepted the sympathy generously, but she still had to show off her acting skills. Meng Hun pursed his lips and cupped his hands at her. "It's my fault. I wasn't honest with you. But this matter concerns the lives of my comrades, so I have to hide it. It doesn't matter if I die, but I'm afraid I won't be able to kill the enemy." Jiang Pingji loosened her grip on Meng Hun's neck. Meng Hun felt it and sighed in his heart. Lu Shi's Langjun was good at martial arts, but he was kind and soft-hearted. It was too easy for him to be taken advantage of. Jiang Pingji didn't seem to notice the change in Meng Hun's expression. She asked sternly, "You said my cousin." "No, my cousin was deceiving me. What's going on? Didn't you cause the war in Meng County and Song Prefecture? The war spread and many people suffered because of it." Meng Hun felt a pain in his heart. Jiang Pingji had evoked the worst memory in his heart. He didn't think too much at that time because he wanted to avenge his wife and daughter. He brought his brothers to rebel against the Mengs and burned down the county governor's manor. But he didn't expect the Mengs to be so short-sighted that they used the Mengs' army just to catch them. Meng Liang's evil deeds and the Mengs' exploitation of the common people had already caused a lot of resentment among the people. The Mengs' army exploited the merchants and the common people in the name of searching for Meng Hun and the others. It was called a search, but it was actually to loot the property of the innocent people and take their wives and daughters. The Mengs' army was no longer a famous and courageous army in the Xia dynasty. They were just a bunch of ruffians. Meng Hun rebelled against the Mengs. That was the fuse, but the real cause of the chaos in Meng County was the Mengs' army itself. But no matter what, the cause was Meng Hun. His lips trembled. "Although I don't know what kind of flowery words this bastard used to deceive you, I'm not a treacherous person. I've never done anything wrong to the Mengs, nor have I done anything wrong to the people of Meng County." Jiang Pingji's eyes wandered between Meng Liang and Meng Hun. Her eyes flickered as if she was thinking about whether their words were true or not. The others had heard about Jiang Pingji from Meng Hun, so they had a good impression of her. They did not act rashly. Jiang Pingji said, "If that's the case, why don't you tell me the truth from the beginning?" Meng Hun secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that there was still room for negotiation. Not only was the young Langjun in front of him kind, but he could also tell right from wrong. "I'll have to start from a few months ago." Meng Hun took a deep breath and tried to calm himself down. Otherwise he was afraid that he would strangle Meng Liang. He had his own plans. Meng Liang, that bastard, had to die. Otherwise, how could he go to hell to see his wife and daughter? After Meng Liang's death, Lu Shi could take his head to the Mengs and ask for an explanation. That way the Mengs would owe him a favor. At the same time, he also hoped that Jiang Pingji could help his brother out for the sake of this. He did not care if he died, but he could not let his brothers die in vain. With that in mind, Meng Hun could barely calm down and tell the whole story. Although Meng Hun tried his best to calm down, his eyes were still red and tears were about to fall. The audience in the streaming room did not praise Meng Liang anymore. They all felt sorry for Meng Hun. It was a beautiful scene to see a delicate person crying in the wind. After watching it, one could only sigh and then feel nothing else. But Meng Hun was a 7-foot-tall man. His eyes were red because he was talking about something sad. The audience could see that he was trying his best to hold it in. His hands were clenched into fists. His knuckles were white and his eyes were fierce. Chapter 172. Cafeteria Daffin Auntie. My heart aches. Whether it's in the host's world or in reality, good people never get rewarded. Lao Siji Lianming. The Mengs are really bad. How could a loyal man like him be forced into such a corner? But I still have to say that he's a brave man. Loyalty doesn't mean blind loyalty. He's a good man. If you don't acknowledge me, it's unfair. Xian, I hope you can help him. He's too pitiful. Liwezi Sando, same. Although reality is cruel, I still believe that good people will be rewarded. Jiang Pingji was also shocked. She widened her eyes in disbelief. How could this be? Meng Hun said, if you don't believe me, you can ask the merchants in Meng County. Even though the Meng's army tried to shut them up, I believe that someone will tell the truth. Even if you can't, you can ask about Meng Liang's reputation in Meng County. Jiang Pingji was hesitant. After a long time she said, although I sympathize with what you've been through, you know that the Mengs are one of the 4 noble families in Dongqing. Even the government is afraid of them. They can only worship them and don't dare to offend them. How can a small family like mine go against the Mengs? For the safety of my family, I can't let you kill Meng Liang. Absolutely not. Meng Hun felt helpless when he heard that. I can let you go and guarantee your safety. Leave Hejian County as soon as the gate opens tomorrow morning. Don't come back and don't try to assassinate Meng Liang. Jiang Pingji added, I'll pretend that I don't know anything about what happened today. Meng Hun was shocked. He smiled bitterly and said, you're still like this. What should we do in the future? What do you mean? Jiang Pingji asked. Meng Hun said, you don't know this, but this bastard is narrow-minded and holds grudges. Now that he heard our conversation, how could he not remember? The young Lang Jun could pretend that nothing had happened tonight, but would he ever forget? If he gets out of danger and tells the Mengs some nonsense, I'm afraid that the Mengs will not only not thank you for saving their lives, but they will also attack the Lus. According to Meng Liang's character, it was highly possible that this would happen. Suddenly Jiang Pingji was in a dilemma. She said hesitantly, How is this possible? Meng Hun said flatly, why not? Meng Liang listened to the conversation between the 2 men who had different thoughts. He was extremely anxious, but his hands and feet were tied up and his life was in the hands of others. He couldn't make a sound and he couldn't defend himself. He was so anxious that he was about to die. Although he did not know why Lu Shi had framed him, he was clear about one thing. In Lu Shi's hands at least he had a way out. If Lu Shi was convinced by Meng Hun, he would be dead. Behave yourself or I'll pinch you to death. One of Meng Hun's henchmen kicked Meng Liang's thigh, and Meng Liang almost exploded as if someone had stepped on his tail. I'm afraid you don't know that the Meng family of Zhangzhou and the Lu family of Hejian used to have a grudge against each other. It's just that County Chief Lu, who is also Long Juan's father, has been cautious and tough all these years. That's why the Mengs didn't punish him. Meng Hun couldn't care less. He was afraid that Jiang Pingji would be stupid and release the tiger back into the mountains. The first lady of your family used to be the matriarch of the Mengs. What? Jiang Pingji was shocked and almost lost her composure. What nonsense are you talking about? How dare you tarnish my mother's reputation? Meng Hun swore, if I'm lying, I'll be struck by lightning and I'll be sent to hell after I die. I'll never have a good ending. Jiang Pingji calmed down a little after hearing that. She continued to ask, well, I'd like to hear what you have to say. Although Meng Hun hated Meng Liang, he didn't like to add fuel to the fire or take advantage of the situation. He just calmly told what he knew. If I remember correctly, the first lady of your family was the daughter of a concubine from the Gu family of Langia. She married Meng Zhan many years ago, but Meng Zhan spoiled his wife and neglected his concubine. He suspected that the first lady had an affair with another man, so he humiliated the first lady. He even beat and scolded the first lady's eldest son. Then they divorced and a few years later, the first lady remarried County Chief Lu. No matter what kind of man he was, if the woman he abandoned found another man, he would definitely feel uncomfortable. Meng Zhan was even more narrow-minded. Meng Hun had been his guard for many years, so he often heard him curse after drinking. Meng Zhan still holds a grudge against the First Lady's remarriage. If I let Meng Liang go back and say that I rebelled against the Mengs and was manipulated by the Lus, think about it. What will happen? Will the Mengs let go of your family? Although Meng Hun was an uncouth man, he was also meticulous and more meticulous than the average martial artist. He was also more rational. Jiang Pingji seemed to be persuaded by Meng Hun's words. She rubbed her eyebrows tiredly and asked, "Then what do you think we should do?" Meng Hun made up his mind. He knelt down and kowtowed to her. "Meng Liang must die. He's an ungrateful bastard. If we let him live, he'll bring disaster to you. If that's the case, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you can agree to it." Jiang Pingji moved sideways and helped Meng Hun up. "You're a man. How can you kneel just because you want to? Get up." Meng Hun's subordinates wanted to step forward, but Meng Hun refused. He looked stubborn. "Since my wife and daughter died, I've been living on hatred. Even if I fall into hell and never reincarnate, I'll drag this little bastard down with me." Did the host say that she was the representative of truth, kindness, and beauty? Ye Qingzhou. Although that's the case, Nongfu Shangquan is a little worried. He's not wrong. The streamer is indeed sincere in plotting against others with hypocrisy. But I think that as long as she treats the county chief well, unlike Meng Zhan, it's good enough. Everyone felt a little disgusted. They had to admit that they all hated the kind Virgin Mary who had no principles. But when faced with some things, they hoped to see the kind and beautiful side. Whoever was a little bit cold would be scolded. Jiang Pingji the streamer was the same. What she did was not what the public expected. Naturally, it would cause others to hate her. Lao Siji Lianming. Tis key. If you want to see a pure and untainted white lotus, go watch TV shows instead of watching the live streaming. Do any of you remember that the streamer wanted to do something big? Since ancient times, the winner takes all. That path was either to reach the top or to die. How painful would it be for a kind white lotus to fight for the world? If she didn't use force and intelligence to convince people, and didn't use schemes to trick people, was she supposed to rely on her gentleness to make people feel comfortable? If that was the case, it would be better to go see the hot girls in Japan. There were close-ups in high definition and it would be disgusting. As for the streamer, she was flat-chested and had no figure. The bullet screen in the live streaming room didn't affect Jiang Pingji. It wasn't that she didn't see it, but she didn't think it was necessary to care or explain. She did her own thing and didn't care what others said. Her ears were filled with the voices of those people fighting for their lives. One of them even wanted to commit suicide. "What are you doing?" Jiang Pingji quickly grabbed the dagger from the man's hand and threw the weapon far away. He hated suicides the most. No matter what the original intention was, suicide was an act of cowardice. "Get up, all of you. I have a way to deal with this. It's shameful for a man to fight for his life." Jiang Pingji said angrily. Her face was also angry. Obviously, she was really angry. The man who wanted to commit suicide was watched closely by everyone to prevent him from doing something stupid again. They didn't care about the reprimand in Jiang Pingji's tone. Their focus was on the first sentence. She said angrily, "I'm not doing this to save you, nor is it for anything else. I just want to protect my clan and retreat from this disaster. I don't care if you want to live or die. If you want to die, don't die in front of me." Before Meng Hun could speak, Meng Hun's comrade asked, "Do you have any good ideas, Lang Jun?" "It's not a good idea, but it's better than what you're doing." Jiang Pingji said harshly, "Meng Liang's behavior can't be left alive. I can hand him over to you. You can do whatever you want with him. But it's not that easy to protect all of you." The man said again, "Lang Jun, we're listening. We'll do it no matter how hard it is." Meng Hun couldn't say anything. He was also the focus of his comrades' attention. They didn't want him to commit suicide. "First of all, you have to bear the crime of kidnapping and killing Meng Liang." The man made a sound of doubt and said blankly, "We should have killed him. Why would anyone fight for the crime?" Jiang Pingji was speechless. "To be honest, young man, you're kind of cute." She ignored the young man's words and continued, "The Mengs won't give up after hearing the news." Meng Hun had something to say. Meng Zhan has always been suspicious of the first Longjuan's bloodline. He doesn't recognize him. He has hinted many times that he wants Meng Liang to inherit the clan. If Meng Liang dies, the first Lang Jun will be the heir of the Mengs. Meng Zhan doesn't want that to happen. If Meng Liang died, Meng Zhan might really explode. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.